What's up, everyone? Welcome to the episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter, NJH287, also on LinkedIn. You can follow me there. The website, dsmsports.net, where you can find everything, and the podcast is available on whichever podcast platform is your favorite. Just an awesome episode for you guys today. I'll try to keep this intro short, but I was so psyched to be able to have this guest on, someone I've been fortunate to call a friend. We've kind of seen this industry mature and grow up together. He has lapped me multiple times, though, serving in leadership roles with the Carolina Panthers, growing with social and digital there, the Brooklyn Nets. We'll talk a lot about the Carolina Hurricanes, where he led marketing, and now he's the marketing director at Zoomph, a software platform that you are probably familiar with, but if not, you'll learn more about it today as well. My guest on the podcast today is Dan LaTorraca. He is truly a legend, inner circle Hall of Famer, Mount Rushmore, whatever you want to call it in the space. Just a wealth of knowledge and insight. You're going to learn a ton from him today, whether you work for a sports team, a brand, a tech platform, anything in the greater sports space, just marketing in general. Just a great opportunity to learn from someone who has been in those trenches, who has done successfully, and truly innovated and been ahead of the curve in many ways as well. So listen up. Here it is, my interview with Dan LaTorraca of Zoomph. I am back on the podcast with today's guest. I'm so excited to have him on. We've been anticipating this episode for a while. Glad and proud to call him a friend. My guest on the podcast today is Dan LaTorraca. He is the marketing director at Zoomph. Dan, welcome to the podcast today.
Neil, thank you for having me. Also proud to call you a friend, buddy. I know like people don't get to see the prior convo before we go in record mode with this, but we've been talking for a while, and it's always awesome to catch up with you. So really excited to dive into a bunch of topics today.
Hell yeah. And I think back to because this is your second appearance on the podcast, and years ago when
Mhm.
maybe fewer kids then, and we were just starting to get to know hockey as a sport, and now here you are at Zoom and continuing to help the sports industry and learning a lot more along the way. So give us a rundown of what your career has looked like up to date, and bring us up to speed on what you're doing today with Zoom.
Yeah, I remember the last time we recorded together. I was sitting in my car in my garage as to not wake up my baby in a condo in
Oh
Raleigh. When we
wow.
first moved there, we stayed in a condo for a year before kind of getting a house. So can remember it like it was yesterday. But going further back than that, I went to school, a small school in northeastern Pennsylvania, University of Scranton, and around the time I got there, so did the Yankees AAA team. And I looked at that as a sign because I grew up a huge baseball fan, a huge Yankees fan. And I went to school to be a teacher, and I was pretty bad at that. But I looked at that as a sign of like, hey, I've always wanted to work in sports, but it was the same kind of like, I've also always wanted to be, shortstop for the Yankees too. Kind of a daydreaming kind of thing. But I decided to try my hand at sports journalism and spent a lot of time getting a lot of bylines for the local paper, the school paper, wrote for a magazine. Back then, I started a blog, and that was like 2005 or six. So that long ago, 20 years ago, blogs were a thing. And did that for a couple of years. And by the time I graduated, I learned how hard it was to get a job in sports media in the New York market where I grew up. So I fell into advertising. And my first job out of college was with this little boutique agency in the Empire State Building, doing SEO and social media and all sorts of stuff like that. And this is like 2009 or 2010. So that was still an emerging field for brands.
Mhm.
And after a while of that, a bigger agency came along and gave me more money to work with bigger brands. And I said, sure, I don't want to work in the Empire State Building anyway. And did that for a while and consulted for a little bit because I really wanted to understand how sports teams were working in terms of marketing, especially in the digital side. Did that for a while and eventually networked myself into a job with the Carolina Panthers. And my initial role there was going to be focused purely on social media. They had a need for that based on what a friend of the owner said and a political strategist suggested. Frank Luntz was the guy actually. So he's relatively well-known political
Yeah.
strategist. It's like, hey, Panthers ownership group, they're all friends. You probably need to invest in dedicated social media support. This is going to be big. And a few months later, I was there, interviewed there, drove down. My wife and I fell in love with the area in Charlotte. Charlotte still feels like home all these years later. And my role with the Panthers initially was all social, right?
Mhm.
But I had a pretty good digital background, so a lot of other opportunities fell into my lap. So helping with their mobile app. So shout out Yinscam and email marketing and website stuff and how social and digital was going to integrate within other departments in the organization, whether it was through sponsorship activation or retail and ticket sales or in-game. At the time, the way our department was structured, social was part of the broadcast team too, and the Panthers had a pretty robust broadcast network. They even had their own TV channel for a little bit while I was there. So that was another integration piece there. So wore a lot of hats, did a lot of different work, and this was again early in the days of social media for sports teams. So they didn't really have a dedicated graphic designer. They didn't really have dedicated digital video producers. If you go back and look at content from 2011 that the Panthers put out there, don't judge me. I don't have a creative background. It's really bad.
You
But
want me
over
to?
time, we were able to advocate for the right investment there and craft a pretty strong strategy across digital, but that was really led by social. And a lot of it was built on one-to-one interactions and kind of honestly inspired by the words written by the owner on the walls, which the fan is the most valuable member of our team. And it was built on engagement and creating content that facilitated building a close relationship with fans and then developing the most human voice possible. And by the time that the Panthers got really good, we were able to capitalize on that and have a whole lot of fun, which I'm sure we'll get into the Panthers Super Bowl
Oh yeah.
season, which now was 10 years ago, feels like yesterday, but we were putting stuff out on social that really every other week it was a different tweet that would have 20 to 40,000 retweets would go viral and things that I shouldn't have gotten away with at all. So I had 6 great seasons there with the Panthers. And as my wife and I were both from the New Jersey area, we're like, hey, we're expecting our first kid soon. We want to be closer to home for that. So I talked to a few of the teams up north, and as someone who did grow up, one of the few New Jersey Nets fans, took a role with Brooklyn Sports Entertainment. And at the time, they were a slightly different organization. They did own, and they do still own the Brooklyn Nets and their Barclays Center and the G League team. But at the time, they were also managing operations for the New York Islanders. So my role was it was similar to the Panthers. It was overseeing all digital, but with a much bigger team of like 20 to 25 people, whether it was web or social or paid media or content strategy, all that stuff across multiple brands and venues and boxing lifestyle brands because Brett Yormark loves boxing. And I spent a year there living in Brooklyn, enjoying being a dad. And my wife and I loved it. Didn't love our rent payments though; those were pretty expensive. And it was great to be there. Went to a whole lot of Yankees games. But then we realized just how much we missed living in the Southeast.
Yeah.
And after about a year at the Nets, and this was around the time that they were selling the team to Joe Tsai, the Carolina Hurricanes, and I started talking about a role there. And I did miss the South, and my wife's sister spent some time living in Raleigh, so we're familiar with the area. So I flew down there, talked to them, and we kind of put together a plan of, hey, let's do some cool stuff here, and ended up joining the Hurricanes in 2017. And my role initially was focused on, hey, we're going to clean up digital and get that in a really good spot. The social, email, web, all that fun stuff. And if you like what I do after the first year, let's talk about expanding this role here because I've done digital for a long time. I've worn a lot of other hats, but I want to get into a broader and more traditional marketing sense of things. So year one of the Hurricanes was very lucky. They had a new head coach in Rod Brindamore. They had a new owner kind of entering his first full season. They had the second overall pick in the draft. They were unveiling new uniforms, and there was a chance to really revitalize things. There was a new energy about the team. So I came out of the gate swinging too, because the first sort of like marketing slogan I was able to push out there was inspired by like a poem my mom used to tell me. It was "Take warning," right? And then it evolved from there into like something that fans still love. We don't use it as the Canes don't use it as much,
Yeah.
but either way, between bunch of jerks and the storm surge and all this other stuff in my first year, it was pretty easy to expand. So I
Oh
inherited
yeah.
creative services and then retail, and ultimately my role expanded a whole lot in 6 years there, which was a great time. I loved my time with the Hurricanes. Learned a lot, did a lot. Really proud of the work that we did there. But like by then I was teaching on the side. I ended up teaching, and I had three kids by the time I was getting ready to say like I need a little break from the team side. And it was for those of you that have worked in the team side listening, and Neil, I know you have too. There's so much fun about it. There's so many great things, but family is an important piece too, and you definitely don't get to see your family as much when you do work on the team
Totally.
side. And for you're a hockey fan too, yeah, if your team is good, you are locked into a hockey schedule from essentially August when the preseason and training camp starts, and your team is good until May or June. And then you start up again. And that's a long year, a lot of games, a lot of time away from your family. So I had been talking to Zoomph a little bit, but also the Carolina Hurricanes were a longtime customer of Zoomph. They did really, really special work to help us monetize our social even more and also optimize our social, but get a whole lot more value out of our sponsored campaigns and activations. So I was familiar with the platform, loved the people, loved the product, and always kind of wanted to get involved in the tech side. So knowing Amir very well for years and knowing the kind of leader he is was like we started talking and there was a fit there on the marketing side and it's been a great move. So I'm actually I think this week wrapping up my first year
Wow.
with Zoomph and it's been great. Look, there's a learning curve too, going from marketing a sports brand to marketing a technology solution and platform. It's different, but the people there are great. The product is so damn good, and which makes my job a lot easier.
Oh yeah.
And we have like awesome people on the marketing team all around that like are all committed to kind of building this thing in a special way. We also have amazing customers too, which helps too a lot in the sports and the brand side. So I've learned a whole lot about B2B marketing and the SaaS and the tech landscape. And there's a lot I want to do still, but it's been a great first year, and we've been able to have some really strong results in one of our best years ever. But it's still plenty to do, which I'm excited about for the future. So that's where I am now. That is the past
Hell yeah.
20 years of my life in probably a 7 minutes stretch there. But appreciate you for listening. And for those of you that haven't muted me or hit the 15-second fast forward a bunch of times, I appreciate you all for listening.
Well, I'm gonna put you on the spot real quick now. What get for people who are not familiar with Zoom, give us
Yeah.
how do you describe it? Give us the elevator description of Zoom.
Thank you. Appreciate the alley-oop there. So Zoomph works with sports properties, so teams and leagues, as well as college athletics departments and brands, and essentially tracks and measures all of their social and broadcast and in-venue content activations, media, all that type of stuff and does a few things with it. One, it makes it really easy to track and report and organize all of your content, whether it's broadcast, social, or what have you, but it also measures it. So if you work for a sports team, you can basically say like, hey, here's the social value that we're driving with our posts. And social value is essentially the media equivalency, right? Hey, this social post generated $100,000 of social value. Well, that's what it would cost to advertise on that platform.
Right.
But then there's also brand exposure value. So using an AI computer vision model, Zoomph tracks everything and can say like, oh, great. Well, McDonald's is on that logo, and based on the performance of this content, here's the brand exposure that McDonald's received. So brands use it if they say they're a bank or a healthcare company and they have a bunch of different sports properties they sponsor, whether it's a jersey patch here and a social campaign there or a broadcast overlay there, they can quickly track and understand how all of their stuff is performing in nearly real time to be like, all right, well, we could be getting more value out of this, or this is performing really well. Because ultimately, they want to be able to report on the ROI they're receiving from their investment. So teams use it, say, like, hey, let's modify our rate card, let's track our value, and let's be able to report on things quickly. Brands use it kind of on the other side of, I want to make sure that this team is being honest. I want to make sure we're getting as much value as we can out of these activations. And then colleges actually use it a little bit differently, which I had no idea about going in, is they use it more for like pure social tracking and athlete tracking to understand, how they're stacking up against other programs, how can they take social learnings that work well for one sport and apply it to another? How do they compare to other ones? And of course, they almost a recruiting tool there. We have certain schools in the SEC that are tracking like 200 athletes and they can say like, all right, well, we have robust analytics that we can provide you with. If you're a football player, basketball player, gymnast, whatever. And we can say like, well, this will help you get deals. This will position you for
Yeah.
deals. We have the audience demographics. We have the social performance metrics. We can track this stuff for you so you can report on the exposure too. And that's another big piece there for a lot of college programs as well. But as you and I both know, college landscape is evolving fast and is essentially
Very much
becoming pro
so.
sports in a lot of ways. So they're all positioned for a lot of success there. But ultimately, it is a great media performance measurement tool. And you and I both know this because I know from your time working on the team side. Back in the day, even at the Panthers, it would take me forever to pull all the social posts as part of a campaign. Like, hey, Krispy
Oh,
Kreme
yeah.
sponsored all these things for the Panthers. And then, like, all right, season's over. And all of a sudden it's February and you're pulling all these things.
Manually
Well,
tagging things.
yeah,
Oh gosh.
exactly right. Well, Zoomph does it in a second. There's like 8 layers of redundancy to make sure everything gets tagged automatically, which I mean it takes seconds for a report right there. So that's why partnership teams love it. They can get like you get a call from a partner and it's like, hey, how are we doing on this one? Well, you have the results in seconds there rather than waiting, whether the data lags, there's 2 weeks, that doesn't happen with us, which is great. You can get it instantly and be able to report on that or optimize stuff and be like, hey, we still like we can be doing a little bit better with these posts. Let's increase the logo size or placement or what have you. So another long rant, but Zoom is a great tool for teams and for brands in order to get more out of their sponsorship and more out of their social and broadcast.
Yeah, and Zoom's been around. They're one of the OGs in this space, and
Yeah, yeah,
it's
over
cool to
10
see it
years.
evolve. And it's very very much needed and very valued as well. And it was just great hearing you go back to your career story as well. Like I mean, I was having flashbacks, and I remember I remember DMing with your former boss at the Canes, Mike Foreman.
I
And
love Mike.
DM me the day you got hired, the day before because when you got hired, and he was like, we're about to announce a new hire and it's going to blow people away. And that was you, and you delivered and then some, really just transforming how we think about how teams can develop a brand and create new revenue streams out of the blue, and season opportunities, and develop these new ways for fans to fall in love with you. Just a great opportunity there, and you leave a legacy wherever you go. And I'm gonna say because you're too humble to say so, but if there's a social media sports or digital media sports or marketing sports Hall of Fame, you sir are a first ballot entrant. So it's a pleasure to have you on today.
I mean, that's very kind of you, and I put you right up there with everybody else too, Neil. Because
I
what
will.
you've done to champion best practices and evolution and calling out, all like, you do a lot of the work for us, which is great. But like anytime I see you come up on my any social feed, I'm like, boom, gotta stop because the insights you provide and your ability to notice all these things and look at it differently and apply really good insights and perspective to it, that's special. So you've done so much to elevate this field over the past decade plus that I would put you way ahead of me on that Hall of Fame
Oh
list
gosh.
for sure. So, but I appreciate the kind words and my time with the Kings was special in the sense of that was a team that had struggled for a long time on and off the ice. Raleigh's a tough market. It's a college market first. It's a
Totally.
college basketball and football market, and hockey, obviously, as we know, is still sort of growing in the Southeast, although it's been growing pretty fast with the way the Panthers and the Lightning and the Canes,
Seriously.
the Preds have all played. Then, of course, we see what's going on. And on the other side of the country too, which lots of teams, and you look at Utah and then growth there of just these non-traditional markets. But the Canes struggle. I mean, when I was in Charlotte for 7 years, and we did a couple of things with the Canes, but they were not in a great spot, and they were able to create and build a competitive product. But the key there is our marketing team was able to capitalize, and the thing that is most important to me is we're able to help give fans a sense of identity and pride. And
Yeah.
that's why we all do what we do, right? Like we get to play this small role in being that catalyst that grows that love and creates that connection and builds that sense of community and creates memories of like that memory of that father taking their kid to a game or those two friends that are watching the game at a bar. We're here to help make that even more special and to give fans a sense of identity and pride through our marketing and branding campaigns. That's something that I'll always be very proud of. We had a great crew and a great team there, and hopefully they'll continue to build on that. But from a bunch of jerks to a bunch of other things that we did and somehow got away with, we had a lot of fun.
And of course, not to even step over the Panthers tenure as well, where you guys really moved the needle and pushed things forward for the industry also. But I want to even jump back to like how you
Mhm.
got started in the space. You mentioned your time coming up in the ad world and the
Yeah.
agency world, and that's not the same path everyone takes. I mean, some people can come up in that side of things when they get into digital, social marketing, sports business, etc. And others come up more straight content production or comms or whatnot. So I guess
Yeah.
like as you came in and sort of had that experience before of understanding what are we actually trying to do here and what's the business trying to accomplish here and having that background and that sort of foundation before you came into this to a sports team when you started with the Panthers, like how did that influence how you thought about where social fit, where digital fit, and ultimately
Yeah.
like was that sort of a part of your mindset early on of like not just hey we're out here to make get some likes and to create some fire and but ultimately like we're doing this all for a reason.
Yeah, that's a great question and a great observation. And my background, believe it or not, in SEO and like web content strategy. When I first got started, that little agency, then ultimately made it over to larger agency, and I was doing some of that, but a lot of it was also like paid search and digital
Hmm.
media, like advertising. That helped give me a bigger picture view of like how all these things fit together. And at the time, social was new. And even then, the NFL social policy was like archaic back in like 2010. You could only really include links to posts that went
Right.
back to your website. And obviously, social is a great traffic driver in some ways, probably better back then than it is now.
Totally.
But I didn't have a strong creative production background at all. I've always tried to be somewhat creative with my approaches and into marketing strategies, but I'm not a good designer. You can go back and look at those old Panthers things. They're bad. But having that understanding of how all these things fit together to to drive value for a brand or an organization. And advertising also gave me a really like a master's degree in BSing. Those two things combined really helped me in when I did jump over to the sports property side. So when, for example, the social, obviously powerful tool for engagement, for revenue driving, but also it's like, all right, well, how are we driving traffic with it? How are we driving leads with it? How is it feeding these other pieces here? How does the mobile app fit in with all this other stuff? How does email fit in? And it's ultimately like it wasn't just about social, it was about building a strong digital ecosystem. And social may be the most valuable and impactful and engaging part of that, especially in that era when everything was social. I mean, you remember that transition, right? Of like when you and I were like applying to colleges way back when, we would probably look at like their website first, or sometimes
Totally.
even a brochure. And now I got a feeling when kids look at to explore colleges, they're looking at the Instagram account
Yeah.
first, the TikTok account first. So really, but social has been like that front door, that front porch for teams in a lot of ways. So a lot of the resources and strategy started there, but it had to fit together with everything else and to ultimately drive value and figure out, identify where those value opportunities are. Because in the Panthers case, they were doing really well with ticket sales. They didn't have a lot to offer because the PSL system they had there. So it
Right.
was like, where are we going to make money elsewhere? Where are we going to drive value elsewhere? And is it with driving tune in for our broadcast network? Is it with retail and merchandise sales? Is it with like something like sponsorship integration would end up being the biggest piece for us. So really having that perspective of like we have to see how this fits together with everything else and also understand compromise. Like a lot of times it's tough, and it was tough for me at first too. Like it was almost like, hey, social is this. You have to maintain the purity of it. Like you have to maintain like there's a way to do this, and we can't have other departments influencing our strategy and decision making here with like another ticket deal or this or that. But now, I realized early on, like this is while it is an important marketing tool, it has to fit in within the boundaries and the needs and goals of the organization. And if you can still do a job that engages fans at a high level and makes them feel valued and not like you're constantly asking them for something, but then also you're able to generate revenue and support other important business objectives, that's the perfect sweet spot there. So that was kind of the perspective going in. And look, you and I both know sports is a people business. It all comes down to relationships. The best way to build relationships is to find a way to support other people's objectives and goals with what you have on the marketing side. So that helped a lot. And then the other thing I mentioned was being able to BS really well. That helped a ton too. Advertising gave me a great background in that, and also being an English major helped a little bit
Yeah.
too. And
Huge.
that helped because this was new. I had never managed a brand before for any type of company. I'd helped, I had advised some of our our customers and the agency, but I'd never done it with my hands on the keys before. So a lot of it was, and thank goodness a lot of folks there did not also have a strong digital background because I was afforded the luxury to learn on my own. For certain things and look at, all right, what are the Bengals doing? What are the Eagles doing? What are the Braves doing and the Ducks and whoever else? And that was such a big part of the research because I didn't have the creative abilities, but at least I could outwork, right? And I could grind myself into knowing what I had to do. And Zoomph, not to get salesy, has a tool for this now, which would have saved me a lot of time called Benchmark. It's
Yeah.
basically like CrowdTangle on steroids. But back 15 years ago, it was more so like you bookmarked everything, and I would just absorb as much as I could about what everybody else was doing. And then ultimately, I crafted a strategy of like, I like that, I like that. We can do this. We don't have the resources for that until we built something that was on the foundation of best practices, but also with like, how can we be different and unique to the nature of our market? And that's what helped us win ultimately with the Panthers, because we're never going to beat the Cowboys or the
Right.
Patriots or the Giants in terms of audience size and relevancy and reach and all that. But what could we do differently and better than them? And the first thing that I picked up on was just like answering fans a lot more. And
Yeah.
that was something, remember Zappos, like that was like it was one of their like the focal points of their social strategies. They actually responded. Like we were still in an era in 2011 or so where like if a brand responded to you on social, you were like, all right, it's either like an automated customer service thing or it's like a mistake. And the people, the responses didn't have personality or uniqueness. And where we are now, it's like, oh man, this brand is actually cursed at me. But so we've evolved a whole lot. But back then it was new, and that was something the Panthers could do differently. So building those one-to-one relationships, and I even kept a list of like certain things fans were passionate about and certain things like and we built authentic relationships there. And I think that really helped us not only understand what mattered to them, but the language they were using and how to craft and build our content strategies. So it was a mix of best practices and understanding what worked and what didn't and what we liked and what we're capable of, as well as what was going to resonate with our fans. And we didn't have the creative resources. We didn't have a lot of other stuff that other teams had, but we were able to at least strategize our way into driving value both internally and externally.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that thoughtful response, and it brings back a lot of memories as well, but also things that are still very much applicable today. And I mean, I even think back to like understanding, okay, when fans feel like they're being heard or being listened to, like that matters. When a fan goes over the moon because they just got DM from their famous sports team, like that fan is going to talk about that for life, and they're going to brag to their friends or whatever, and
Oh
their
yeah.
their fan avidity is that much stronger. And so you have these things that like intangibly and in the field sort of is going to have a huge impact, but it's hard to really demonstrate that, I guess, in some ways. Yes, you can look at like engagement rates and number of followers and number of shares or any metrics you have now, but like how do you now think about like the way to balance of understanding, okay, like this is effective and here's how I can prove it's effective, both for those more short-term goals like, hey, we're going to drive some revenue from a sponsor integration or from some ticket deals, and but
Yeah.
also more importantly those long-term goals of like brand marketing. If you look at the graph and if people can see me, that's like on up and down in terms of how important brand
Yeah.
marketing is. And I feel like we're back on the upcycle now that relies on a little more of belief that this is going to matter in the long term. So I'm going to stop rambling now.
No, no, it's
Yeah,
great
like,
questions and
how
great
did you
thoughts.
understand what how these things were driving success both in the short term and the long term?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I'm a firm believer that data does validate strategy. Obviously, I mean, like I work for Zoomph, and
Oh,
that's like
you got
what
it.
they're built on. But even at like Canes, that was a big piece there too. But in the Panthers case, that also mattered. Now, the certain things like those one-to-one interactions, like those aren't measurable. Like they are technically, like Zoomph can track those, and you can actually see social value if some kind of response actually catches fire. Like that there is a way, but there's so much more in those particular instances of measuring the sentiment that it's not measurable in the traditional sense. But if in the Panther scenario, that was okay in terms of that stuff because the ownership group was very much about the fan is the most valuable part of our team, and they really like it fit naturally with sort of the essence of what they were built on, of that like very fan first, fan friendly, and like so that worked. And in the cases where we were able to track those people actually becoming season ticket members. And it did happen a handful of times too. Well, okay, there's some ROI there,
Yeah.
right? It was X number of hours of work for me or minutes in many cases. And sometimes it was just gifting them or engaging them consistently. And then it became a season ticket member. So there is an ROI that you can work there, but there's so many other ways that like an attribution pieces that like factor in there that it's not ironclad like some of the other ways to measure things. However, the social voice was a key there, and that was something we were able to have like data on that I used to validate kind of the direction we wanted to go. And like the Panthers would tell me all the time, like we don't want to get too cutesy with social. And to tell you the truth, I still haven't Googled what cutesy means. I'm not sure. I assumed it meant like, absurd or off base or just like, be
Right.
be normal, Dan, that kind of thing. But I really like, and this was at the time when you had the LA Kings were starting to show a little more personality on social, and it was like I started seeing that. I was like, this is what we need to be doing. Like, and we tried it in the comments a whole lot, and that was the way like to test it.
Yeah.
But we would occasionally put stuff out there that was a little bit more, or a little it felt more human and had a bit more personality and sass and spunk to it. And what I would do is track the data and performance of that one and start kind of planting those seeds with my boss and his boss and ultimately their boss, who was the owner, of like, look, this is working and this performs better than the average post. And clearly, this type of language and messaging and approach, it's resonating with our fans. And I think it was built on those one-to-one interactions, warming people up, and then eventually kind of having actual personality and catching people off guard with some of the stuff that we put out there is going to be really good for growing our brand, engaging our fans, creating pride and sentiment there. And we backed it up with data. And like we were able to show like, hey, this is working and get that buy-in to the point where in 2014 or so, we started having a lot more personality. And then I was able to share a lot more data. And then in 2015 was the Panthers Super Bowl season. And that's when like, all right, gloves came off because it
Yeah.
was where the team won. I think it was 15 or 16 games in a row in the regular season. And a lot of people were like doubting the team and they were upset with Cam Newton for dancing in the end zone. And it was a lot of like, oh, your guys are good. You're probably the worst 10-0 team though. And everything was just ripe for me to dunk on social. And almost like every week we had something else that would go viral because nothing galvanizes a fan base. Like when you're successful, the team is good, the players are good, you're winning, and the media or other narratives are coming at you. It puts a chip on the shoulder. It
Yeah.
creates, and we look, this same thing happened at the Canes years later
Always,
too.
but jerks.
But
Yeah.
like it was the perfect storm there. And every week it was like a snowball rolling down a hill. And we roasted at the time the Washington Redskins for their name twice in 48 hours. And let me tell you, ownership then was not very happy with me. Excuse me, that team's ownership. Panthers, they were pretty happy with me. But that was every other week. It was something to the point where we roasted Odell Beckham at one week. And it was just, it exploded and it redefined what the brand was. And all the way until losing the Super Bowl. But it really helped set the Panthers apart there. But if not for showing the data and getting that internal comfort and buy-in and trust, we would not have been able to evolve that way. And the Panthers started that 2015 season. They were towards the bottom of, and I don't really look at audience size anymore because come on, you can
Right.
buy followers, and I look at some of their metrics besides that. But back then, people did look at follower counts, and the Panthers were towards the bottom of the NFL in audience size. By the end of that season, they were top 10 in all of pro sports in North America. So it was a
Oh
hell
yeah.
of a season of growth. Some of those numbers are I don't think other teams have seen since then. And so it was a lot of fun. But without data, you're not able to do that kind of stuff. Whether it doesn't even have to be about being snarky on social because that era is kind of coming and going in a lot of ways.
Right.
But it can even be like, hey, this type of video content is performing well, or this type of data, if you have it, can validate the approach you need, or it can reaffirm like, hey, we need more resources here because this is working, or we can ease off this, or this type of talking head video isn't really doing anything for us. here's the data to prove it. Why are we wasting time and resources and money on this when we know something on TikTok might perform better or something else might be better suited for actually engaging our fans and will resonate with them? So, long way of saying, yes, you can apply data to help validate your strategy or educate and inform it. It can be very, very, very helpful for not only investing in the right approach, but getting that necessary buy-in internally or support internally,
Totally.
which is equally hard, whether it is on the hockey or football or basketball or baseball ops side, or it's on the business ops side. You can't argue with numbers.
Yeah, and I think what's really cool, especially if you think about like managing up or getting buy-in or getting trust, is
Mhm.
it creates that flywheel effect too. Like the better the content performs, the more the players going to want to work with you because they want to be part of that content that works really
Yeah,
well. The more that sponsors are going to want to work with you because you're creating content that's going to perform well. And
bingo.
it's a flywheel, and then you get more opportunity, and then you show that's all working and moving those needles that really matter. And that's something that really I mean, both of the Panthers and the Canes, like the buy-in from players, the ability for you guys to interact with players and get them to have fun was just
Oh yeah.
second to none, and it continues to this day.
Even access too. If we can show, hey, this content is so valuable that partners will be part of it, and this is the value it's driving, and this is how fans respond to it. It's like, well, we need more access there. And then it gets kind of hard for others to argue with. Like, obviously, you always want to be respectful to the athletes and give them their space, but a lot of teams struggle with the appropriate level of access. And if data can help you get more of that, or at least um, engage the stakeholders that can help you get more of that,
Yeah.
it can work. So, but always have data, proactively leverage your data.
How do you sort of think about like creating or like, working for the platforms versus working within the platforms? Like almost like it's not like I can clarify that a little bit. It's like you can do what the platforms are going to want you to do. Like, you know this is going to go viral if we talk like this or we try
Yeah.
this format. But other way around, you can start with okay, what brand do we want to be, and then how do we best execute that brand to succeed on these platforms to get our fans to engage with us? Like, is there a bit of give and take there, or is it tempting to sort of lean into what the platforms are telling you, or what you know will kind of just go viral because it goes viral? Like, how do you balance those things?
Yeah, no, and balance is the right word to use there because obviously you want to maintain strong relationships and build trust with the platform reps in order to, you never know when you're going to need them, right? Like all of a sudden a player gets hacked and we need help getting access to their account again, or you need help with X, Y, or Z, or hey, the
Not
team's
just that, just like
rebranding, we got to,
what the algorithms are favoring too, and what you know,
yeah.
like the algorithms are just begging you for this almost.
Yeah, like what helps us and what actually helps them, that kind of thing. So you do always have to keep that grain of salt in mind. And you do also, but have to see like, all right, what actually is performing well for us. But sports has the luxury of sports teams, especially, of having so much affinity and natural engagement built in there. It's not like we're marketing washing machines or something like that. But it's like, all right, that's cool. That dryer works really well. That's okay. But with sports, it's like, okay, you can test things out and you can try all sorts of different things. And if it fails, people will forget in like 2 hours. Or you can get some good learnings out of it. Okay, we could have done this differently or done this. Now, it's always important to understand sort of where the platforms are coming from and lean in on things that could be working or could make them unique or are some unique pieces that you can leverage in order to drive different types of value there.
Mhm.
However, I'm a firm believer in every team, every market, every fan base has unique differences and they
Yeah.
have to be leveraged as such. And in some cases, and we see it all the time with Zoomph, like I'm looking at certain customers right now, and like I always hear a lot like people saying Facebook is dead. Not the numbers I'm seeing. Like I'm
Seriously.
seeing some like outrageous numbers on Facebook lately in terms of driving value. And people will say like, "Oh, we need more video," and it's like, "Wow, static stuff is actually working really, really well."
Yeah.
Like so sometimes you have to look at the numbers and see what resonates with your fan base and what platforms are worth investing more in. But a lot of it is testing, and a lot of it's a little bit of art, a little bit of science, and you want to take input from a bunch of different sources. And look, we deal with that all the time in marketing, right? Because everybody consumes marketing content, and everybody manages or has their own social account. Everybody's got an opinion on, hey, you should do
Oh
this,
yeah.
you should do that, and that's fine, But there's social media professionals and there's people that like see it, and those are different types. Doesn't mean their ideas aren't valid. So many good ideas have come from folks that aren't like on the keys, and that's great. You want to be open to that, but you also like have to keep in mind there's a big difference between me who can make French toast and a professional chef. And there's things
Yeah.
there where like we're aware of and know how to do that, if you can blend those creative ideas that come from all sources, or those suggested best practices that come from the platforms with your own sort of perspective, expertise, and experience, and also opinions, you can get a really good mix of, all right, let's try this, let's test this until we see what sticks. But I'll point back to Twitter Amplified as a great example. RIP. I think it's still around, maybe. I don't know, to be honest with you.
I'm not
But
sure.
it was this great for those of the listeners that are not aware of what that platform is, or essentially the way Twitter worked back in like 20, I want to say 15 to maybe 2023. I'm not sure if it's still
Hmm.
active, but if a whitelisted property, so say a sports team or a large media outlet, something that had got a lot of engagement and video views on their channel, their platform, their profile, uh, they would upload a video, they would enable it for Amplify, and pre-roll would air before the content. And the property, so in this case, the Hurricanes, would split some of that revenue with Twitter, and everybody was happy because we're making extra money and we're showing like other ways social can be valuable. When my first season with the Nets was 2017, and we ran Twitter Amplify on every single video for the most part, like 99% of videos.
Mhm.
And I think the team made about $16,000 that season. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. That's free money. That pays for Clip Pro or something for the year,
Yeah.
almost. And then my first season with the Canes, I want to say it was that when it was all said and done, it was around $250,000 we had made off Twitter Amplify. It was stupid. For the first video we had monetized was the announcement of the Whalers jersey that was coming back. And that out of the gate was like $6,000 of revenue right there.
Yeah.
Between the storm surges and the bunch of jerks and the playoffs and everything else. Okay, well we made a lot of money, which was great because like hey, look, ownership team, look, we're
Right.
generating all this revenue just from content we're producing. But Twitter was really secretive about what made a video because it was random every time. Like, yeah, video views were a factor, but there was like this secret formula to determine what would actually get more revenue. And we cracked a few codes there. In fact, I even had to speak about it at NHL league meetings back in like 2018. But one of my theories was, and they kind of, they didn't deny, they didn't like say it was super accurate was I think the amount of one-to-one interactions we had on the platform did influence how videos were being served and promoted in part of this program because we were hyperactive with responding to fans that season too.
Yeah.
And I do think that was a factor. They didn't say it. They didn't say it was right or wrong. And we had some other things we clocked to, like if it was a video recorded by a cell phone and under 20 seconds long, it tended to over-index like those soccer videos that you see NHL players like kicking a soccer ball
Yeah.
around for games. Like I
Yeah.
didn't think those would do well in there, and then each one would generate like 800, $900 sometimes. So whereas like the Nets, like I would have a sick dunk and it would be like $50. So it was interesting. There wasn't it was a lot of testing, but eventually we figured out some things that worked, but we weren't really getting the info from Twitter. They were just saying whatever you're able to amplify, do
Yeah.
whatever violates league policy, don't, and go have fun and make everybody money. And I think in the first couple of years with the Canes, during the pandemic, it slowed down because like content also slowed down. But the last big piece we had with Twitter Amplify was the David Ayers game, which I'm sure you remember. It was
Oh yeah.
emergency backup goalie comes in for an extended period, not just a couple of seconds, and essentially wins the game against the Maple Leafs on hockey night in Canada. And he was the team Zamboni driver. It was this whole wild
They signing
story.
paychecks, but then he goes and
Yeah,
gets them.
exactly. And that video, I remember texting our video producer at the time and was like, dude, you glue yourself to him, get as much as you can. Because hey, we didn't have video people traveling my first season there, but Twitter Amplify helped me make the case of being like, look at all the money we're making. We need more video. Thank God somebody was there, and it wasn't just random PR person with their cell
Yeah.
phone getting something. We had our one of our best video producers there, and he got some iconic footage that was later used in ESPN commercials and all sorts of stuff. But that one video where if anybody listening goes and Googles it, David Ayers, of him like walking into the locker room after the game and all the Canes players are spraying him with water and all that, that one video made like $80,000 for us,
Wow.
and it was insane. So like we were making good money there, but again, there was no real like this is how you do it, this is how you don't do it. A lot of it is just you test stuff out, you see what works, you track some of the data, and you look around at what others are doing for inspiration, and that's how you sort of craft something that works well for you.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great one and a great memory too. I kind of also hear about like something you said that really resonated with me. I mean, a lot we did, obviously, but the idea that like there is this affinity in sports that doesn't necessarily apply to every other industry, especially your basic CPG industries, let alone
Yeah.
B2B or whatever. And there's these moments that people have are at their most emotional highs. That's often the times when that's why sports, or that's why brands want to be part of sports as well. They want to when
Yeah.
people's hearts are open, that's when a brand wants to sneak in and be like, "Hey, can we get in there too a little bit?" And there's also these things around demographics and like, "Hey, just because the same two posts might get one might get 100,000 views, one might get 90,000 views, but if the 90,000 views is to a demographic you're trying to reach,
Yeah.
Hispanics, 18-35, whatever it might be, women, that might matter more than the 10,000 incremental views that are going to a demographic that is not as high priority at the given time or what the goal is. So when you're thinking about this from like both a value creation perspective, ROI perspective, even how we think about how Zoomph measures things in terms of like the basic like equivalent media, what you have to pay to get this sort of reach or this sort of engagement. Like, how do you start to think about those softer, like more intangible things like, hey, when you're part of a hat trick, when you're part of a game-winning play, when you're part of a championship, when you're part of something that we know is going to skew toward a younger audience, like how do we take that into account when we're talking about the value that we're producing and creating from these social posts?
Yeah, no, that's a really, really great question. And a lot of stuff is measurable out there, but that's where the human element comes in too. I think it is an important piece there, because all of us, many of us, all of us that work in sports, or consume sports in some way, we're sports fans. We were raised that way. We have certain experiences and opinions and things that have made us who we are, and define how we operate as consumers of sport or fans of sport. And I think that's an important piece to take with you if you do work for any type of sports entity, whether you are on the team side or the league side or a players association, or you're working for a brand that is a sponsor or a partner, or in the sports space. It's important to keep that perspective there. And a lot of that stuff isn't always directly measurable, but it is the kind of thing. It's like, all right, this feels right, and this checks boxes and kind of in my head as far as what our core values are. And that can be things like, does this build a sense of community? And then, okay, then you look at the actual activations around it and what's measurable. And then you can determine, like, all right, is this effective? Are we getting good results here? Are we getting good attendance at this event? Or are we getting enough leads from this activation? And there's ways to kind of extend it one piece further and measure certain elements, though you can adjust your tactics and then be like, all right, this is how we can get more out of this. Perhaps we need better pricing or better advertising for this, or other ways to reposition this campaign. But ultimately, where it starts is that human element. And I firmly believe that like sports fandom can be boiled down to like there's a desire for connection and community, and it's fueled by identity. It's those three pillars to me are the things that you kind of have to engage in some way, because that's what we are at the core of our identity, or our kind of essence of sports fandom and sports consumer like ism. And I think finding ways to engage and leverage those, or build some brand pillars that help kind of convey those. And in the Canes case, we defined it as like fun, bold, and regional. But those are still lenses we could operate through. Of like, regional is a great one because we can talk about like local community engagement and building like a Canes bar network, or authentic kind of brand positioning campaigns that were like murals or things like that. So ultimately, the essence of those things, it's not directly measurable in a traditional sense. Like it can be in a bunch of different ways of like, all right, how do we attribute this to that? But if you're seeing certain things like, and you're tracking how retail sales of certain items are going up and trying to understand the psychology behind that, or certain types of social content or campaign or messaging or email pieces or other activations, whatever it may be, events or ticket offers or promotional theme nights. All that stuff is measurable in a sense, but you have to also be able to tie it back to that human element in order to kind of have both sides there, right? You got to have the tactics you can measure, the activations you can measure, and then refine and optimize. And you got to have, well, this is how we tie it back to affinity or passion or community or belonging, or these other less tangible and measurable things that are really at the core and essence of what it means to be a sports fan.
Yeah, I mean, like some of the best quote unquote ROI is when someone does feel like when they talk about when they've added their Twitter bio or their Instagram bio, I am from this city, I and do this,
Yeah.
and this is my job, and I'm a Canes fan. Like you can't really measure that, but you know
No.
that's incredibly valuable, right? And now I'm gonna put a welcome mat on my doorstep that says
Yeah.
like welcome to Canes territory or whatever. Like that
And
is
then how do you
ROI.
influence that? And it's not as measurable, but like one of the things I wasn't able to get this off the ground at the Canes before I left, but like one of the things we had this whole like 20-point plan of like this authentic brand positioning in the market of like little ways of like, and it's like that if you've read what is it, Atomic Habits, right? That
Yeah.
first chapter, it's about like the English bicycling team, right? And they did all these little things to improve, like by 1%, and the result was significant. Well, that was kind of it wasn't inspired by that, but it was like I think it's a fair comparison of like we had all these little ways we were going to try to get our logo out there authentically, and it was
Yeah.
like. All right, high quality decals in every online order from our e-commerce shop, and working with local businesses to distribute flags and all
Love
these
that.
little ways to influence like the visual positioning of our brand because that creates more passion. People see that and they say, I want to be part of that, or that's something, or they're already a fan. They're like, I love that this is, here and that piece of their identity is hanging on a flag outside their local bar. And that's an important piece there. Well, yeah, to your point, it's not as measurable, but it's just like so important for growing a brand and creating that sense of pride and that regional sort of connection there that sports really is. So I'm rambling. I apologize, but
Oh, I
that
love it.
stuff is always I love that stuff.
Hell yeah. Every little bit adds up and compounds itself
Yeah.
and it makes it that much more powerful. And the more you walk around and see people like in those little tiny ways showing that
Yeah.
fans is part of their identity, it's contagious and you want to be part of it too.
Oh, Neil, the joy it would bring me when I would see a bunch of Jerks shirt out in the wild. And in Raleigh, it was great, but if I saw one in Charlotte or Greensboro or anywhere else, God, the joy that it would give me because it meant like okay, this Canes brand is now it's touching people in Charlotte, which is 2.5 hours away. And I know what the relevancy for that brand was like when I was at the Panthers, and it wasn't good.
Yeah.
And now, like, you have someone not only wearing a shirt that the logo is small, but it's a phrase, it's an identity piece there. But if I still see those shirts, and I don't see them as much, that campaign was like 8 years ago,
Mhm.
but like it brings me a lot of joy because we get to play a role in their sense of identity and pride, and that's why we do what we do in the sports industry.
I mean, somewhere out there in Helsinki or something, there's probably some shirts out there too.
There's a lot there. Let me tell you, with that first week of like selling those, I think we hit almost every continent except obviously, Santa's workshop and everything. But we did a lot, which was wild. Like every province in Canada and I think every state in the United States within the first like 15 days or something.
Well, let's touch on not necessarily a bunch of jerks itself, but I think something that I was continually blown away by, during your stint with the Canes, but really just overall is how as you got your hands into more of the marketing, more of the channels there as well, and just really sort of like create a new paradigm of this is how you can do agile, nimble marketing and take advantage of opportunities. When Don Cherry calls you a bunch of jerks, all of a sudden that's a huge new revenue stream and brand campaign for you. And in the old days, or even in the modern days, for many brands organizations, that can't happen overnight. It takes well, let's have a meeting, and then let's have a follow up to the follow up meeting, and then let's source some estimates. And there's so many things that go into it, and yet then the opportunity passes by, and you don't get that momentum anymore. So like.
Yeah.
Like did you like how did this kind of come in your head? Did you have this idea that like, hey, we need to be more nimble. We need to be ready to capitalize on these opportunities. And then how do you actually make that a reality within a large organization like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've said this before, but when you work, honestly, anywhere I'm learning now, but for when I first coined this sort of phrase is that when you work in sports, your most valuable resource is time. And
Mhm.
you're never going to have enough of it, especially in the marketing side when you are on the business schedule and you are on the team schedule. And the only way to make better use of your time is to be incredibly proactive and thinking far ahead with a lot of the little things. So when something big does happen, you can capitalize on it. Now, there's other pieces of being able to capitalize on it, like establishing a process and a plan for certain things. No one knows that you're going to get called or insulted on national television and lean into a t-shirt, but like you still want to be able to plan to capitalize on things quickly. But
Mm.
going back to the first point, that proactive approach, that was something that was really important to me. And when I got to the Hurricanes, because like it would give us more time to build higher quality activations and look ahead. We know
Yeah.
there's going to be a certain number of periods for every game. We know there's going to be lineups for every game. We know when players' birthdays are. We also
Yeah.
know when holidays are. We know when theme nights are going to be. Like, how far ahead can we plan? So when we do get jammed up with a whole lot of work because, hey, it's Black Friday and we got 2 games and we got this sale, we got to do all these other pieces, things that aren't able to be mapped out as far in advance as possible, we have less to worry about. We can still do the little things that matter and drive value. And fortunately, a lot of those pieces are also sponsorable too, so it's
Mm.
like, all right, build it out, forget it. And we have, Sebastian Aho's birthday graphic ready to go 5 months before it's his birthday. So that's a big piece there, but that was something that was important to weave into just every facet of how we were operating. It wasn't just about social; it was about email. It was about just departmental planning, whether it
Yeah.
was theme nights or items or looking far ahead, uniform, whatever it was. Creating a culture that prioritizes that proactive planning is the key to being able to have the runway to capitalize when crazy stuff happens, and it always does. And lightning struck us 2 times in a year at the Canes, and that was great. And then it didn't strike the same way for a while, but like we had that bunch of jerks thing, and we were able to capitalize on it and build a shirt. We had and people is important too. We had the right relationship. I can still remember sitting in my office after that game, after we sort of concocted this plan, and Mike Foreman is texting Don Waddell and Tom, being like, "Hey, we've talked. We're making shirts about this. I pitched this idea to him, and I was like, we can use this company here because at the time Breaking Tea was just kind of getting big, and I was like, I
Yeah.
think they can turn it around for us quickly because like I
Yeah.
don't want to wait here for this one. It was also President's Day weekend, and a lot of our other shirt distributors were closed. And like they answered me, Mike got the approval. Then it basically was like, all right, if Dan can show what a shirt model will look like by the next morning, we'll go. And look, this is not a knock on the Panthers or the Nets or the Islanders or any other team I've represented. They're all different and they all have things they're good at and things that they're they're not so good at. There's no way that happens with the Panthers. That would have taken weeks or months of approval. And then
Mhm.
by then, as you said, the moment's passed. But because of the relationships and the trust that we had there at the Canes, we were able to move lightning fast, right, on that one. And because of that, we made a whole lot of money. Because once you have like the shirt available, okay, well that you can take time for that one. That was a top seller, like even going into my last year with the Canes. So like that, but you got to get it out there quick. You got to
Yeah.
act and strike while it's hot. The same thing happened with that emergency backup goalie situation, except
Mm.
we already knew the game plan. We already done this, and we were able to actually make it even faster because we designed the shirts internally and we worked away. We had it all. We had a shirt dropped, I think, 40 minutes after the game, and we had
Wow.
found out that Ayers was a kidney transplant recipient, and we were like, all right, we got to make sure a portion of this is going to whatever fund he wants to there. And those shirts are still around. I know they're still trying to sell some of them. My dad was rocking one this weekend when I was hanging out with him, and I was like, great to see it. But we had the game plan in place there. So that proactive approach, you got to create the runway for time to capitalize. Now, look, that whole bunch of jerks thing that was inspired by Cam Newton dabbing in the end zone, and this woman from Nashville, a lawyer, was so upset about it. She penned an op-ed, and that was like gold for me because like we had footloose jokes and we had all sorts of great stuff going on
Yeah.
social the next day, and there wasn't really an opportunity to capitalize beyond that. But I remembered the fan reaction to like leaning in on someone coming down on you when you had just won. And it was like the Don Cherry thing was that on steroids. So we were able to capitalize and make money off getting insulted, but then also create more game plans for how do we get ahead so we can create a runway to capitalize on the a tiff with the Montreal Canadiens over offer sheets or
Mhm.
sweeping the Islanders in the playoffs or whatever it may be. We found ways to capitalize on things, but the only way we could do it was if we had enough of a runway. Because working in sports, man, it is a grind and a half. So
Yeah.
you really got to create. Hopefully, I answered the question a little bit. I
No,
kind of went off on my
totally.
own tangent.
Like I'm even thinking like it's not too uncommon now for teams to sort of keep the receipts and like maybe bring up an Instagram post or a tweet from ages ago,
Yeah.
months ago.
Yeah.
But it's like, how do you take that to the next level of not just being ready for that moment, but being ready for a moment where you can turn it into a multi-channel campaign or something that really can affect, multiple parts of the organization and drive revenue directly or indirectly. And it's a
Yep.
great framework to take into things. So like something we talk about a lot on this podcast is having like and a lot of folks will tell me directly like we know what we're going to do when we win. When we go on a championship run or we go on a playoff run or our team gets hot,
Mhm.
we know what we're going to do. But it's like, okay, one, I love that. It's great to have that plan in place and know how you're going to capitalize. But also, like, how are you going to capitalize on any moment that arises when you have an opportunity? Because you're not always going to win. And, like, but you can't just throw in the towel and say, okay, well, whatever. We didn't, the breaks didn't go our way this season. We'll get them next year. It's like there are moments every single day in sports that you can be ready for and be ready to execute. And it takes a lot of planning and preparation and trust and buy-in and internal, cooperation to get that done. And clearly you are proof of that in action.
Well, and if you give yourself more time, it just leads so much more opportunity for creativity and doing stuff that's a higher quality, whether it is planning out the promotional giveaway item or a Star Wars night idea, or if it is, or Whalers night is another great example of like, hey, you really want to plan that out. That up until that was a Super Bowl for us in a way to
Yeah.
capitalize off that, whether it was retail or activation. It was a chance to our creative team to flex, and you want to be able to plan that out far away in advance, or a stadium series game, whatever you can do. Give yourself the runway to do it for the things you can control, right? It's like it goes back to what I tell my kids all the time too. Like, you can't control what's going to happen to you, but you can control how you react, right? And if you have the right system in place and process in place and plan and people and all that, and you can come up with the right ideas and creative solutions, like you can really turn a tough situation into a win, or you can turn a win into a bigger win. But you got
Totally.
to have a lot of things in place to do it. It doesn't just happen like that, and you don't have the runway to do it. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's what really separates the good from the great is that those cultures that prioritize, people first above all else, but process and proactive planning. And that's how you win time and time again when these things happen because they always will. It might not be as big as every other situation, but even capitalizing on the smaller ones can still drive value in the end.
So something that you guys always did a good job of too, and I think that a more and more teams have really adopted this sort of approach is I'm going to use the buzz term, which I am sort of becoming a fan of now, the eventizing and making smaller things feel like even bigger things, so that
Yeah.
it's not just a Star Wars theme night, but now all of our creative has a Star Wars theme, and all like and how we're
Yeah.
going to talk and how we're going to react to things, and we're maybe have some merch and like and you talk about like, kind of preparing for giveaways, preparing for theme nights, preparing for the whalers and all that as well. So like what's the calculus like to say, okay, yes, this is worth us redoing all of our starting lineup graphics, all of our goal gifts, all this, all that, and how and we're going to come up with some great lines that we're going to have ready to go in the drafts
Yeah.
folder. Like, like what goes into that sort of preparation, and also how do you understand that this is worth our time, worth doing, even worth maybe like, having some outside design help in cases to make sure that we are ready for everything.
And that's it's a few different pieces, but that immersive campaign type thing is valuable. But you also got to pick your battles, right? Like,
Yeah.
and there's ones where it makes sense to lean in hard on, whether it's for your brand and your local fans. So if it's like in our case, a North Carolina night or a
Hmm.
Whalers night or something that we know will be impactful for our own fans or our brand in a larger scale, like, okay, those are ones you lean in on. And there might be other ones where it's like, no offense to the great Jimmy Buffett, but maybe the Margaritaville night like doesn't really require that same level of immersiveness and investment in creative resources and concepts because we know like all right that's probably not the same demo that's going to be engaging on social or has that ability to amplify what we're doing. So you got to pick your battles and you got to pick them far in advance, right? And that's where it comes back to that proactive planning, looking far ahead. And I'm a firm believer you should know your theme nights like yes, you can add ones, but like know them like a year or two in advance. Like be looking that far ahead because that'll give you time to ideate and come up with ideas. So from that standpoint, it also comes down to like, all right, have the time to ideate and be creative, so you can look at all these touch points, but also create the meetings and structure and process and opportunity to get the right people talking so you can activate and everyone has different timelines of things. It might take your F&B team a little bit extra time to come up with I don't know, the North Carolina night signature food item or a signature
Yeah.
drink or something, and that might take layers of approval, or an item that comes with it, or a promotional piece, or your ticket sales team might need less time, or but maybe there's a community piece here. Get the right people talking far in advance so you can say like, hey, we really want to make this something big, whether it's Whalers night or whether it's a theme night or whether it's not even attached to a game, whether it's just an event that we're trying to build to engage fans. Hey, we want to make this food truck rodeo in the off season in our parking lot something big. How can we make it better with content and with marketing and with retail and all these other pieces? Get people talking and get people open to it. But if you surprise them at the last minute, it ain't gonna work out well for anybody.
Right.
It's just create resentment in a lot of ways and frustration. So give a fair runway, give a window, and you know don't try to do too much. Kind of keep it simple, right? In terms of how broad you go, you can't do everything perfectly, right? So focus on the things that we know will drive value, whether it's a bar network or it's a theme night or it's a certain retail line or whatever it may be, and figure out how you can squeeze the most value out of it with other participation across the organization. And that could be things important to community outreach too. Like I'll point to North Carolina, I think has the most HBCU colleges out of any other
Mhm.
state, and I wanted to really lean in on that. And we did for a couple of our activations. We wore their athletic department logos on our helmets for a game. We had some other cool pieces with it, but you want to try to get everybody in there and give them time to do it so you can execute it the right way. I'm a firm believer in quality over quantity too. And if you want quality, quality takes time. So give yourself that time.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine too, when you create these more overarching campaigns or these more immersive campaigns, or at least these campaigns that go beyond just like a basic mention, then you can use a tool like Zoom to be able to stitch it all together and understand what is this value, and then showcase that value, and now it becomes something you can pitch to a partner in the future, or
That's a great
put
point.
into a package, and that becomes
Yeah,
something
and
that
here,
resonates.
here's all the stuff that we can measure here. And yes, exactly right. Let's now we can attach a partner to it because we have the value. But one more point too. We're in the entertainment business, right? Ultimately, and
Mhm.
an experience business. And if you can deliver a really good experience for people, whether it's in the venue, at an event, or even behind a phone screen, they're going to keep coming back and they're going to want to be associated with you at some level. So that's kind of where we're
Yeah.
there. But yes, if you can also make money off that too, even better because then
Hell yeah.
everybody's happy.
A few minutes left here with Dan LaTorraca, marketing director at Zoom. The time's just flying by, Dan, but as it always does when we catch up. But I want to like I remember I'll tell a mini story for the viewers or listeners. When Dan started inheriting all these different roles within the Canes and went well beyond digital and social. At that point, like I was like myself, I was like, okay, I know the app world, I know email, I know social, but I don't know like about radio ads, about out of home, about all this. I was like, Dan, like, how do you learn that stuff? And I remember texting you with you about it. And it's like, you pick it up, and you certainly did. And so I say all that to sort of preface when you step into a role that is so multi-channel and really overseeing marketing. What's your process like for auditing? Here's what we're doing. What's working. Here's how we know what's working. And I also want to really get into the nitty gritty of like auditing a tech stack and understanding, okay, this is what we're paying for this software to do this to do this to this. This is working. This isn't working. Like, how do you ultimately start that process and then understanding what does a good tech stack look like?
Yeah, great question. And that one will always, when you inherit a role, especially if it's something that you don't have a ton of experience with, or history with, the most important thing you can do is trust your people, right? And we had at the Canes when I inherited retail, like we brought in some great folks who were high character, had great experience. One was with the Cleveland Browns, that was with minor league baseball, and like trust them to inform and educate you, and then it's your job to support and empower them. And I look, the smartest people I know are the people that are comfortable saying, I don't know everything. I'm
Yeah.
not good at everything. And the conversely, the opposite of that is people that you hire someone and then you just like tell them, this is exactly what I want you to do. This is how it should be done. Like, no, that's not how this works. It's not how you get better. That's just
Yeah.
an extension of you. Like, if you had more time, then you do that. But so that was a key piece there, whether it was creative services, because we've already covered at length my inability to be a strong creative producer. And while I may know what a good T-shirt will look like or what I would buy, that doesn't mean I'm an expert on retail or anything like that. So it starts with people, And if you bring in the right character people and with the right expertise, they're going to be able to identify opportunities and look at the gaps and figure out, hey,
Mhm.
this is how we make this better. So you got to get people that are wired the right way, that are ambitious and passionate. And there's two things that I prioritize as a leader. It's proactive planning and it's thoughtful communication. You do
Yeah.
those two things, we're going to get along just fine. We're going to be successful together. And those are the types of people we brought in. And then it was you lean on them and then you figure out what they need or how you can help them. And of course, you can contribute ideas and help and guide, and you can share your expertise that can help educate them and influence them. But ultimately, that's how I learned. It's how I learned retail, and that's how I learned a lot more about the creative process. But I think there's a third piece there that's really important as our industry evolves over the next 5 to 10 years is a lot more people, if they do stick working in sports, they've come up doing rather than like commanding, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Delegating.
And you see it with the Portland Trailblazers and other teams now. You have folks that were entry level people or social media coordinators that are working their way up to VPs of marketing. And I think that's really, really important because as you know, you've done this, and I've done this. It's not as easy as it looks, and it's definitely not. It's time consuming and tedious. And whether you are working with a creative staff that is involved with graphic design or video production or motion graphic, or you're someone managing and dealing with ordering retail and forecasting and managing those types of operations, it's it's not a snap of finger and it gets done kind of thing. You have to understand and respect the fact these things take time. And if you've done it, you can understand that and you know how to like build and work the dynamic. And
Yeah.
if you haven't and you're coming in and you're just like, hey, do this way and expecting instant results, not only will that yield pretty bad relationships internally, but you won't get the results that you want either. So it's important that we have more leaders that have done rather than
Mhm.
leaders that just like talked about doing. And I think that's going to lead to a pretty significant change in our industry over the next decade. The sooner we get there, the better, I think, too.
Totally.
But that's why I hope more teams hire folks or promote from within for people that have done, because I think that's really important that they have leaders have that perspective. And we've
Yeah.
seen it time and time again. Sometimes a team or a company will hire somebody who doesn't really have that practical or technical experience or history, and they don't do as well, and they're not able to build relationships the right way. So anyway, long way of saying the way I learned was to trust in my people and ask questions and learn and support them because ultimately as a leader our job is to support our team. Do you have what you need? You feel empowered? Are there blockers in your way? Like what can help you? And of course you got a little bit, but that's how I picked it up. And am I a better designer for it? No, but at least I know what it takes to design stuff. So that helped me a ton. But going to the tech stack piece of it too, this was something that also it factors into people because you want to understand what do you think we need? What will drive value? What will help you do your job easier? Because time is also money here. We want to be able
Yeah.
to do this and listen to that. And we discuss, all right, how do we make this work to fit within our budget? Why does it make sense now versus later? And there was a couple things that were always really, really important for us at the Canes especially on the marketing and the digital side in terms of our tech stack. Because like you can go to creatives and it's like, all right, do you like Adobe or do you like this? And
Right.
what kind of computer do you like editing on? We'll get that for you. Is there other technical things that you need on the camera side or whatever? Like we'll figure that out. I trust you. We'll make the case for it. And on the retail side, it's often more fixture related or sometimes
Mhm.
point of sale software, or sometimes it's just like, hey, we need help with X, Y, or Z. But on the digital marketing side, you and I both know a lot more nuanced, a lot more things going on across that large digital ecosystem. But there are a couple things that have always really worked for me. And one of them, and I'm going to call them out by name too, just because, hey, well, why not? They did a good job for us.
Yeah.
I worked with Foxhammer Media
Mhm.
for many, many years with the Panthers, with the Nets, and with Hurricanes. And they did a lot of good work for us on the design side. And it was also like it fit our budget and they did a great job. They were reliable, they were fast. And the key with them was okay, they're helping design our pre-game, in-game, post-game graphics for social,
Mhm.
and they do a high-quality job. It basically ensures the way the dynamic was set up and the process was set up was okay. Our social team isn't putzing around with Photoshop during games. They're like, hey, here's the score graphic photo. Can you churn this out there? And they would give it. Here's the lineup. Here's that. And we had a good process for giving them the info they need, and we would get the graphics, and the sponsor logo would be on there and would be good. And that way our social team could focus on building things in Slate, which I'll get to in a second,
Mhm.
or cutting video in CapCut or whatever it may be. But the key there is they weren't worrying about this other thing that I spent a lot of time messing around with in my Panther days because we didn't have that type of
Yeah.
resource. So like um, that's a big one there. But it also makes it so our design team did not have to work games and they could focus on bigger picture projects like a big hype graphic or something that if we win, we can use this, or a million other projects that they have because they're servicing the rest of the organization. And it cuts down on burnout there, which is key. And
Mhm.
since every one of those graphics has a sponsor logo on it, we're using Zoomph. So that's Foxhammer and that's Zoomph 1, 2. We're measuring all that and we're finding, okay, we spent X number of dollars on Foxhammer, but we generated X number of dollars in brand exposure value for all of our partners with this content. If we're selling the sponsorship the right way, we've made a profit off this while reducing stress and pressure on our in-house creative team and our social team and produced more content overall. So those are two big pieces there. And
Mhm.
then any type of lead gen platforms. Yeah, there's some great ones out there. So Dealer's Choice, Tradable Bits is great. Give Lenny
Mhm.
Go a call. Wit Sports is great. Give Steph or Brian a call over there. We worked with a few different ones there, but ultimately, you have such engaging touch points when you work marketing for a sports team. If you are not leveraging them to pull in as many leads as you can, especially with incentives like signed helmet, signed shirt, whatever the prize can be, it doesn't matter. And hit it on email, hit it on mobile, hit it on social, hit everywhere you can in game. Pull in as many leads as you can because you're not like organic social doesn't sell tickets unless the deal is really good.
Right.
And paid
Totally.
media does, but not every team has budget for paid media or the resources and time and bandwidth to execute those campaigns. But pulling in leads, which can then be filtered into like a wolf cycle or another tool there. We saw incredible dividends on that. And we were able to segment really well through that too. So it doesn't matter what tool you use there, but dedicating resources is something that can help you get leads into your system. It demonstrates more value of how social can be without forcing your social team or your marketing team to push out tons of sales messaging the same way.
Yeah.
Like that's asking somebody for something. At least with the lead gen campaign, you're giving something or the chance to win something
Mhm.
in return. And here's the thing: the cost per acquisition is crazy for outside of sports, right? Like if
Yeah.
automotive or real estate or medical, whatever, it doesn't matter. The sponsorship value of those types of campaigns is crazy strong, whether it's on the page itself, ultimately the leads, the promotional assets that come with it. So if you're already making money on those leads on ticket sales or remessaging with email campaigns with retail or whatever, and you're selling sponsorship on it, it's pretty good ROI right there.
Pays
And
for
then
itself.
there's Clip Pro WSC, which is like to me the gold standard of highlight
Yep.
footage cutting. Like it's AI based, so it cuts stuff automatically. There's so many great tools in there that allow you to publish in different. It's evolved crazy levels since I last used it on the team side. But that's one to me that was like a non-negotiable because like you can churn out highlight clips or other video content, put the sponsor overlays on them in like lightning fast. That's going to drive value and money for you and engagement too. And then Slate is another great one
Yep.
as well. A lot of my social team was like, this is like having an extra employee there. And obviously, it can only be as good as your design team like has to load stuff up in there. But once you get it in a good spot, that is a very, very valuable piece there. So that grouping, and I would also shout out Blue Digital. We did a lot of that's
Yeah.
Ticketmaster's advertising arm, not necessarily a tech solution, more of a services piece. But that was one that was great for us. So we would do a lot of paid media through them. So that was driving value through our social platforms and programmatic. And then, of course, we had the content pieces going. And
Mhm.
then we measured everything with Zoomph, which helped us like we would inform our partnerships team of this is what this is worth, or we would be able to build decks for jersey patch sponsorship and helmet patch sponsorship with really, really good validated data, retain customers, attract new ones,
Yeah.
also optimize our organic social through all that too to be like, this is working well, this isn't, this is the value this is driving, and be able to do it really fast. So that, Foxhammer, lead gen, Zoomph, WSC, Slate combo at some level. To me, that's like if I'm going to work for a sports team tomorrow, like those are the things that I need to drive instant success.
Yeah. And kind of like a geeky double click into question. Like when you think about allocating budget for
Yeah.
technology, and whatever spend you're thinking about. Like, are you getting granular with this is going to be attributed to our social media budget. This is going to be attributed to our creative budget. This is going to be attributed to our sales and marketing budget. This is going to be attributed to our sponsorship budget. Like, is it that granular? And what are you seeing even from your time now at Zoomph and starting to understand the landscape and from even broader perspective? Like because it's not so black and white in practice. In practice, it's like, okay, well, we're using Slate for our social content, but it's really helping our sponsorship team, but it's
Yeah.
also going to help our lead gen a little bit too. Like, how do you make that all make sense?
It's and every organization is different in how they handle budgeting and how they attribute certain like this is where this goes, this is where that goes. I'm a firm believer in keeping it simple,
Mhm.
and it's especially when it comes to numbers. And with those cases, there it'd be like, hey, this is stuff that yes, other departments are going to benefit from it, but the money's all coming from the same place. It's all coming from the owner's wallet. So this is how we're doing here, and this is what it does. And I would always denote here is the opportunity with it. Here's how it drives revenue for us. Here's how it impacts and benefits other departments. And also, most importantly, here are the risks too of like, all right, if we don't do this the right way, this is what we stand to lose. And I'll point to like mobile apps too is a great example.
Mhm.
Yin's Cam's awesome. FanReach, I've never used them personally, but when I hear they are awesome too. They're great. Mobile apps are important. We know how much time we spend on our phones. Too
Mhm.
many times, though, teams will invest a lot of money in mobile app solutions there and then not like hire somebody or allocate people hours to actually getting the most out of that app, or
Yeah.
whether it's that or SMS marketing or email. It happens a lot with different functions, but app is the first one that comes to my mind. And it's like you have this powerful thing you're paying a good amount of money for and can drive a ton of revenue. And you're leaving it to be, all right, that's for when our email coordinator gets to it. Like,
Mhm.
what are we doing? So it's always important to allocate or like be as communicative as possible of like, hey, this is how this drives value for us. And on the marketing side, a lot of it can have an ROI if leveraged the right way. And it's important to communicate up front. This is how this impacts ticket sales. This is how this impacts that. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's like it's kind of thing where it's like, yeah, okay, we're allocating some of our budget for paid media for ticket sales. Kind of makes them look good, but ultimately it's all coming from the same place. But as
Yeah.
long as you communicate it heavily up front and outline all those things, it kind of helps not only get approval, but also like then there's extra benefit of getting those things. Like, yeah, Slate helps with our social content in a lot of good way, and it's great. It also cuts down on X, Y, or Z. It helps us activate on sponsorships, and but ultimately, it's helping our social. So like it really like if I'm being honest, like yeah, it does belong here. Like Zoomph in some organizations I've learned partnerships teams pay for it and others
Yeah.
marketing for brands a lot of time it is a marketing department that pays for it, so it's all different depending on who and how the organization is set up, but you still got to think about it critically. And then when it comes to like more creative services stuff, it very much is like, well, this does create some content that makes money, but it's a little
Right.
fuzzy, but there it's important. You know it, I know it. And we know you have to have content. It fuels all this stuff, but that's where it gets a little bit tougher to argue for. But at least you can say, well, we're making tons of money with these other 10 things. That's what pays for this nicer camera or this better editing computer.
Yeah. Did you find too, like, both from your own experience and what you're seeing now, like, our teams generally, like, we are early movers. We are going to look for the latest and greatest. We're on whatever. I go on product hunt quite a bit myself, but I don't necessarily think that everyone is familiar with that, perhaps. But like, we want to test things. We want to be early on. We want to be the innovators, and we are looking for things that technology can help us solve. As opposed to the other way around, we're like, well, what do other people do? Like, what else? What are they doing? And like, well, let's wait till it becomes the best practice. Let's wait till the league recommends it. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm making it much more black and white
No,
than
no, no, it's
reality. But
true.
how do you
I
approach
think
it?
a lot more teams are more like the second one there,
Mhm.
where they're like, all right, we've identified a need here based on this gap or this gap or this gap or an opportunity, and this is where we're either falling short or we need to capitalize on. Let's go find a solution for this. Now, we've seen a lot of other teams though have dedicated leaders that are focused on identifying those technologies or opportunities or
Mhm.
strategies. And I know it's very common in the NBA. Also, I'll give them credit there too,
Yeah.
where their role is like focused on like, all right, let's innovate here. Let's find these solutions. Let's be early adopters here. And I think in a lot of ways that has helped the NBA grow, and especially the international market and a bunch of different ways there. And NHL had a few, so I don't want to say like it's just the NBA because you see this in other teams. But if for the teams that actually have folks that are dedicated to that and also operating in a way that is not driving in others' lanes, but is thoughtfully like bringing these opportunities up in a way that is like, hey, what do we think about this? Can this help you? Does this not help you? Does this solve a problem? And solving them. That's how you get things that like that's how you build new campaigns and innovate. So you really need to dedicate somebody to it because the truth of the matter is most sports teams they're still operating like small businesses and they have
Yeah.
too few people. Even now, teams have expanded from my time, 10, 15 years ago, but they still have not enough people. And a lot of them, even if they proactively plan and have runways, there's still never enough time to look into, well, this is a solution. Or is it, it's more reactive than proactive is kind of what
Yeah.
I'm getting at. But there are organizations, the smart ones, will dedicate somebody to that, whether it's part of their role or their sole role like identify these things that can help, whether it's technology, solution strategies, talk to other teams, talk to non-teams,
Yeah.
and figure out how to get better in every phase there in the margins, or even just go beyond the margins and figure out what works for you. Those are the ones that are going to be even better as technology continues to advance here.
Yeah, I mean it's very of the moment, very germane right now. There's a lot of FOMO of like uh, everyone's talking about AI and generative AI. Like I should be doing something with it, but I'm not sure what. And therefore, like, should I go out and seek things or like there's a lot of that sort of that nervous anxiety almost of like I
Yeah.
and there's other times too when there's like a solution in search of a problem. Like I think when NFTs and blockchain was really big, and it still is in some cases. It's like okay, well. Should we do something there, or are we just looking for an excuse to use it in some capacity? And there's a lot of those that as
And there is a
well.
little bit of that is like, all right, is this a flash in the pan? Is this like a fad? Is this Pogs? Or is this something that's going to be around for a while? And I wasn't super into the whole blockchain NFT thing. I know for some it was great and it probably worked out really well.
Metaverse as
But
well.
being able to read these things like and be like and like, sometimes you miss it too. Sometimes like, oh damn, that was actually really big. I remember even like Snapchat when that came around, I was like, all right, this is cool. I don't think we're gonna be early adopters here because
Yeah.
I don't think we have the resources to do this properly. And I kind of get it, but I'm kind of aging out of this stuff a little bit. And I think some teams that have adopted there in a way, and even beyond sports, have done a really good job with it and really kind of help build themselves. And TikTok too is another one. There was a moment there where we weren't sure if TikTok was going to be a thing,
Yeah.
and the pandemic kind of helped it a little bit.
Very
But
much so.
there was a moment there where it's like, all right, is this just like, is it kind of like Reels? What is it? Do we trust this? And then it got more teams going on there, and now obviously it's taken off because of so many different factors that it's a huge part, if not one of the largest parts of the social marketing ecosystem. So. I know these go beyond TikTok. There's so many different tools out there that help every different department, whether it's food and beverage or operations or parking or analytics and BI. There's a lot of solutions out there, and it's a finite budget, so you got to be mindful with it. But
Yeah.
you need time to think about what you need. You need time to identify what you need, and you need time to actually think about what the right solution is. And too often in sports, we're so like, all right, got next thing, next thing, next thing, next thing. So if you can dedicate someone whose job to that, and like I said, the smart teams are, you're going to pay off that. It'll pay off in itself in a big way.
Totally. One first off, my Pogs collection is going to be worth millions in the near future. I'm positive about this. Sitting in my
Pogs,
parents'
Beanie
home or
Babies,
something.
any day now, man. These will take off.
But no, I'm totally with you there. And like back when I was on the team side, I'm not on the team side anymore, so don't call me folks. But like I rarely would say no to a demo that if someone read because I was like, I want to see what's out there. I want to see, and I want to learn
Yeah.
whether if you say you work with other teams, tell me what they're doing. If nothing else, it adds to your knowledge base. And so like that's
I
like
regret not saying yes more. Now that I'm on the other side, I'm like, damn, I wish I did more of these. I'd learn even more. You did plenty, but I kind of wish I did more now. So, but I respect you for answering the phone and being like, yeah, okay, I'll learn something here.
Hell yeah. Well, in the interest of that, one more thing is the service out. Although I am like crossing out questions in my head because there are so many more things we can ask about.
We'll do a part two later.
Totally. I want to like basically just you have such a good insight now through Zoomph of seeing
Yeah.
what's working out there, what's playing out, how these all these teams and leagues are using the platform, and ultimately the content that you guys are tracking and measuring and helping them understand the value of these things. Like, what are you seeing? What do you think is it potentially an emerging trend? What is something that we should be keeping an eye on? Whether it's platform based or creative based or the way we're talking about ROI. The floor is kind of yours to say. Now you have this insight into all these different organizations. Like, what are you learning?
It's almost an overwhelming amount of data, just because like there is, and Zoom obviously does a great job of consolidating and making it easy to pull out insights. But like with the amount of customers we have on the team side and the brand side, it's like, oh my God, where do I start? It's like a kid in a candy store. But what I'm seeing, at least on the team side right now, as far as content goes, I'm still like, wow, YouTube is really performing well,
Mhm,
and teams are investing more and more in that. Like we have a WNBA report coming out. By the time this probably airs, it'll already be out, but it's like coming out later this week.
mhm.
We partnered with STN Digital on that one,
Very
which should
nice.
be kind of cool. And just looking at like the Indiana Fever, their YouTube numbers, I think they generated more social value just off YouTube than any other team on any other platform, like in WNBA. Like I think that was the most even for them too. They generated more social value on YouTube than Facebook, than Twitter, than Instagram.
Yeah,
So I've seen a lot of positive impact and also just overall investment in YouTube by sports properties over the last couple of years. And I think it's because teams are hiring more video producers or an appropriate amount or getting closer to an appropriate amount because the amount of production that has to be done.
hmm
And they're actually taking the time to understand, all right, this is what we need to, this is an important platform and this is what it takes to nurture and build. This isn't a dumping ground for like for press conferences. Like this is
right.
something that can be really powerful if done right. And there's certain teams like the Ravens that were early adopters on it. They've been doing good for a long time.
Yeah,
And there's other
yeah,
ones that are like up and coming and doing a lot more on there, like the Brooklyn Nets. Yeah, I'm biased, but they've done a good job there. There's others. Some of the top performing content for the NFL last season was YouTube videos too. So I think that and YouTube Shorts. Like if you're already producing vertical video for Reels and for TikTok, dump it on there too. Or
yeah.
repurpose stuff. That's the thing. Like you can throw I think I posted about it on LinkedIn a couple days ago, but the most valuable and viewed video out of every Power Five, actually technically all college programs this year so far, was like a 10-second video of a
Yeah, I saw that
baby
post.
crawling. Yeah, like for Baylor, and I think it got swept up in like the YouTube Kids algorithm or something, but it got like I think was it like
90
90
million
million
views.
views or something.
Yeah.
It's insane. So YouTube Shorts is definitely, and YouTube in general is one that's
Are,
like,
are you seeing
and
too,
the
like
other
within that, like is it best practice to really produce for shorts as opposed to just like clips of our long form?
So I'm a firm believer in balance, but that long form stuff does take time, and we are seeing people not spend as much time with long form, at least consuming it on YouTube. Now they still are, but not as much as they were maybe like 2 years ago. So shorts is definitely it is working.
Yeah.
People are consuming content that way. I think the thing that I would recommend to teams too is like don't worry about linear storytelling with this. If you had a Make a Wish kid from 6 months ago and you have a little clip that you can use of that and throw it up there, I don't think context and linear storytelling matter. Like just
Yeah.
build something that can work well in that platform and it'll probably get swept up in the algorithm and take off. So like if the content is good, it doesn't matter if it's 8 months old. Just build. So that means if something crushes on TikTok, you have this fan footage. Like make sure you get that over there. Like the Eagles they have when they have the live eagle fly around Lincoln Financial Field.
Right.
It's consistently something that just dominates on that platform. It's the silliest thing, but it works. So YouTube is big, I think. There also LinkedIn is another one I see as an untapped
Yeah.
resource.
Speaking of,
Zoomph does have an exclusive relationship with LinkedIn, so we are pulling in all sorts of data there, and I'm it's cool to watch like name drop, the Warriors, one of our great customers there, like to watch how they operate on LinkedIn and what is driving value and how they are engaging and celebrating partnerships and staff and business communications. And we know people have an insatiable appetite for sports and business stuff might not do well on Instagram or stories, but it's going to do well on LinkedIn. And now I have the ability to measure that, and there's an untapped audience there. So those are two areas that I think are ripe for teams to invest in a
Totally.
thoughtful and custom content way, not just like dumping stuff on there. And on the brand sponsorship side, one thing I'm loving what a lot of our customers are doing is they're like a lot of our healthcare partners or like financial services partners. They're really getting smart about identifying content opportunities through like our benchmark tool. So they'll
Mhm.
have like access to see what's performing well amongst NBA teams or NASCAR, and they're getting better at seeing like, all right, broadcast wise, these are the types of things that are actually driving more value than we're currently investing in, and they're able to kind of pivot pretty nimble like. And whether it's, hey, this birthday graphic is actually a lot more valuable than this like video campaign that's not really doing anything, but the birthday of alumni players is like, let's jump over to that unsold resource there, and they're getting more value out of their dollars by investigating content. And there's and I'll even point to Feld Entertainment, right? So near and dear to my heart because
Yeah.
my son is Monster Jam obsessed. They're using the platform in such a strategic way that not only inform all of their different properties of how like best practices for social, but how to get more value out of their sponsored posts and also like white space analysis, which is cool too. And then like
Yeah.
Clemson, USF, those two colleges, right? Like the way like we have a lot of college partners that are innovating, but like those two are top of mind right now. Because they are so active within the platform and they're doing so many great things across social and broadcast there that is really helping position their sales teams to make a whole lot more money off sponsorships, but
Yeah.
also apply learnings to multiple sports so they can get even more value out of the sports that don't get as many eyeballs for them normally. So it's always cool to see how they're using it. I could rant on that for a while, but
Just
I
from a
love how
best
the
practice
brands are
perspective,
using it.
from like a user perspective too, and I think this will inform folks who are working in the space on the property or the brand side.
Mhm.
Is it generally the social and digital analysis team or content team that is in there and surfacing insights and looking for metrics, or are the partnership teams themselves kind of sort of self-serving, so to speak, and
Yeah.
learning to pick up the platform?
That's a great question. So three answers for that one, and it depends on the customer. First, like we have an unbelievable account management team that
Mhm.
does support a lot of our customers, and like the amount of like positive feedback I get from our customers about just how helpful and like good and responsive they are is like I almost gotta like just start muting those messages because it's like there's too many. But if one of the things I love about Zoom or loved as a customer was it built that bridge between our social and content and marketing team and our partnerships team because they were both using it to track campaigns and to report to partners, and social was using it to like improve their strategy. And yes, they wanted to be able to report on sponsorship activations, but a lot of it was like how can we get better with our social strategy and social
Yeah.
content, what's working, what's not. And they would tag it all different ways, even down to like, okay, posts with this athlete are actually over indexing and posts in this format are under indexing. And the partnerships team would be able like, and one of the best parts about Zoomph is like they get data real time essentially. So like there's no lags, there's no waiting 2 weeks like some of the other guys. You get data really, really fast.
Mhm.
And partnerships team, if they get a call from a big time partner, jersey patch person being like, hey, we need to know where we stand on this thing, they got it, and they're
Yeah.
in there. So, but then it also builds a great relationship between both sides there, at least on the team and property side. For brands, what I'm seeing is they're using it only really to measure their sponsorship and track their portfolio.
Mhm.
So they're not really using it as much on the organic side, but also like social for like a healthcare brand or social for a financial services brand is a little different than for a sports brand. They don't get the same level of
Right.
activity. So it doesn't really impact them the same way, but they do sponsor heavily across broadcast or in venue or social, and they want to be able to track this stuff. So usually it's someone who's in charge of partnerships or sports marketing that is like the main person in there. But then we also have like a in between piece. Like Zoom has an API, so a lot of times BI folks will use it. Like our friend over at the Giants, Russell, who he uses that and it just feeds all this stuff into like a bunch of other data sources too, which then helps them kind of distribute the data accordingly. So long way of saying it depends on the customer, but
Mhm.
on the team side and sports side, it's like it's the marketing, content, social folks and partnership, and on the brand side, it's mostly those partnership people that are measuring the portfolio.
Last thing for you is the turtle stack, because I want to end on not something so nitty gritty like that, although that's really practical and pragmatic insight. Is just I want to be able to speculate kind of big picture of where this field is going in terms of value measurement. And I mean, yes, obviously Zoom does more than that. You just mentioned with being able to understand what's working, what's not working, and beyond this partnership measurement. But like when we think about the continued growth of connected TV and more streaming and
Yeah.
more data we're going to have on not just who Nielsen is extrapolating to who we think is watching, but we actually know the exact identities, or at least the basic demographics of everyone who's watching and what their income level is and when the last time they bought a car was and all that kind of shit. Like where is the overall field going? What like technical evolutions are going to come into play? AI is getting better. Computer
Yeah.
machine learning, computer vision is getting better. Like what are you kind of just you personally, as well as I mean, just what you see in the
Yeah.
industry that people are sort of looking to see how this place is going to evolve in the next 5, 10 years.
Yeah, and I am a believer in AI. Like I know maybe generative AI isn't like it's definitely not the answer for content stuff, but I do think AI can be a great support piece if you know how to leverage it the right way and if you have it positioned to help you make life easier, right? The same
Mhm.
way C3PO exists in Star Wars, right? You got to leverage him the right way. Leverage him for stuff in his wheelhouse and it'll work out well. But and that's where Zoomph it does shine with logo identification and an asset identification. And I think that can, because of the real time nature of the data and what we're taking in, I think that could eventually lead to even more contextual advertising
Yeah.
with digital broadcasts. I think with I think RSNs are going to be here, but I think the model is constantly evolving and in flux, right? And more teams we're seeing taking it in house and finding different solutions, whether it's a D2C streaming solution or an over the airway thing. And I think the team's ability and those technology solutions' ability to measure broadcast performance as well as sponsorship performance in there and kind of taking that all in house, I think that's going to be really impactful the next couple of years there too. But going back to I think being able to help read data and interpret it and contextualize it and help with reporting that way is going to be valuable too, because you might have an entry level employee diving in on a piece of software, right? Or like a reporting tool like Zoom. And they may not have a strong background in social media, but if there's a way to sort of understand how this works or what this means and contextualize this data, that can really help with like bridge that gap and help with reporting. So I think
Yeah.
those are things that could be valuable in the future. But I also think that between streaming and being able to measure that, and a couple of years ago I said I think social is not going to have any language barriers soon. I think we're kind of there too with
Mhm.
translation
Totally.
as well. So I think there's so many different directions things can go. But as far as media measurement, I think it'll continue to evolve and add more depth and deeper demographic data, so you can add even more context and value and understanding sentiment to a lot of these things. So I'm rambling. We'll see, but we'll in the short term, at least we have some great solutions, and we'll continue building.
Yeah, for sure. It's space that's ever evolving. I mean, even if you look at the TV ratings for sports events, it's like it's much different than it was last year and the year before, as like Nielsen has their big data panel and all that. And maybe someday we'll be able to let you know, hey, someone held up their phone and showed it to their parents, and that got additional views of your social media post. And
Yeah, I
so
love
much
that.
more opportunity there, let alone like I'm sure there's going to be an agent that Zoom builds that's going to be proactively bugging you all the time, like, hey, did you know about this? Did you see this? Did you see that? There's just so much
Yeah,
interesting stuff
this
to
this
come.
uh, this this team is doing really well here. This posted really well
Oh
and
yeah.
helping take the effort and legwork out of kind of research and ideation and help. And that's only going to help us get better too. If we can
Oh yeah.
save time on the things that do take lots of time and empower us for more creativity and thoughtfulness from that time saved, then to me it's a win. So hopefully, and I'm an optimist, so hopefully that's how it works out. But either that or all going to be enslaved by robots. But we will see.
And it's all about using the knowledge that compounds as you learn more, being at Zoom, as the Zoom platform takes in more content and more data, that gets smarter. And to bring
Yes.
it full circle here, that's what this podcast is all about, is we learn more and more every day, every week, every episode, every conversation, and that's what we try to do here. And so we're gonna have some more fun with Dan and learn more from him I'm really proud of the name for the segment, the Tweets by Dano segment, if you know, you know. And first episode shareable stat coming up right now. Man, just so much good stuff there with Dan LaTorraca, marketing director at Zoom. Just so much good experience, and he's learned from every step of the way. He's been ahead of the curve every step of the way. Just so much good stuff there from Dan. Insights, great examples and anecdotes, great practical takeaways. I hope you were taking notes. I sure was in my head as well as physically. Just so much good stuff there from Dan. But stick around because we're gonna have some more fun with them and learn some more in our Tweets by Dano segment. Trust me, you don't want to stick around for that. There's some really good stuff there. But first, this episode's shareable stat. And simple shareable stat is something that I actually looked up myself because I was curious. Noticing, during the World Series, relatively recent, depending on when you're listening to this, with the LA Dodgers and Toronto Blue Jays, that their amount of tweets, their volume of tweets was very low, including a game in Game 6 when the Blue Jays didn't tweet a single time after first pitch, and the Dodgers only tweeted like 3 or 4 times. And it was certainly something that caught my eye. So I decided to see, is the use of Twitter going down in recent years? And we've heard the narrative about, people going away from Twitter, people giving up completely. Some teams abandoning the platform completely in this post, X world. I still call it Twitter. I hope you do too. As Elon took over and has been through its various trials and tribulations and different narratives along the way. But still, when a big sports event is happening, as we saw in the World Series, there's still probably nowhere else where you'd rather be to see everyone reacting in real time, whether it's a walk-off home run or a crazy catch in football, or whatever crazy opportunity is happening. So want to take a quick look. I looked at major sports leagues as well as a motorsports league just to help balance it out a little bit. Looked at the NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, NFL, and NASCAR, looking at January 1st to November 1st, both for 2025 as well as 2024 and even 2023 to see what it looked like. Looking at the volume of tweets sent by teams out on average and as well as the median for each of those leagues over the past few years during those given month periods. And here's what we found. There's a lot of stats that I shared on a LinkedIn post, but just going to give you one shareable stat today, or I guess one with a caveat. That stat is minus 16%. On average, teams across those leagues tweeted 16% less in January to November 2025 versus January to November 2024. And it's also down 10% if you compare it to 2023. The median, though, is only around minus 1%, meaning it's relatively flat if you look at 2025 versus 2024 during those months across all those teams. So first off, what that means, the difference between average and median. Of course, average means there were some teams that had their tweets probably go up a little bit, but really more so, a lot of teams had their tweets go way down, which brought that average down to minus 16%, whereas the median shows that the halfway point between all those teams is really basically flat. So what can you take away from that? Well, it means there's not a ton of change necessarily, but certainly some teams driving down that average are decreasing their volume of Twitter. And we certainly saw that in Major League Baseball with those 2 World Series teams, which prompted me to do the study in the first place. As you heard in my interview with Dan, when it comes to allocating resources, deciding where you're going to spend your time, and as well as where you're not spending your time, the opportunity costs. He brought up Snapchat recently or briefly in the interview around what's it like to decide when you're going to decide to invest resources in that. We went through the same thing with TikTok, of course, around 2019, 2020. And then by the time the pandemic hit and TikTok just started exploding, it was kind of a no-brainer, even though it did take a dedicated resource oftentimes because it was so different from other platforms. And then Reels and Shorts came along as well, of course. But when it comes to that in-game, it's what is the opportunity cost? If you're not spending time, live tweeting with someone on the keys, that's one more person that can be doing something else. And Dan talked about using Fox Hammer Media to sort of take care of those regular recurring pre-game, post-game, in-game graphics and creative so that his team could spend more time on those bigger picture things and those bigger production things as well. So if you are decreasing your volume on Twitter, first off, certainly take that time to put the calculus into it. What are we missing here? Are there a lot of fans that we're not going to be able to reach elsewhere? Are there, that sort of unduplicated fans? Are we leaving a lot of value on the table? Certainly, Amplify may not be, what it was as when Dan was talking about those stories around how much revenue was being driven by the Twitter Amplify program. But certainly a lot of teams do have sponsored elements still that are capturing revenue from that in-game tweeting when the numbers justify it. So is that revenue that you're leaving on the table there, or is that revenue that you can accrue elsewhere by spending the time and resources to look at other platforms, or trying to move fans to other platforms, maybe your own operated channels on an app, or into a Discord, a Slack, a WhatsApp, or just more frequent posting on Instagram where people can comment there. There's a lot of different questions that come into play when you think about, are we going to take away time from Twitter because we feel like we're not reaching a bunch of fans there, as many fans as we once did, and not enough reach and engagement to merit the time being spent on it. So really interesting shareable stat. I can go on and on about this. Check out that LinkedIn post. There's some good comments there as well, with people talking about their own individual experiences as well as those talking about from a leadership perspective on how their team or property is treating the platform. And super interesting. There's no right or wrong answer here, but again, that shareable stat. If you look at those leagues that I analyzed: MLB, NBA, NFL, NHL, and NASCAR, the average tweets per team went down 16% from 2025 versus 2024 from January to November, but the median was only down minus 1%. I also, just so you know, an FYI, engagement was slightly up on average. Average engagement from Twitter, both the median and the average were slightly up as well. So maybe not quite as many tweets volume wise, but those tweets are getting over average engagement. Leave this, of course, there may be some bots happening there, some fake engagement as well. But I'm rambling too much. But more importantly, I want you to stick around after the shareable stat because we're gonna have some more fun and learn some more from Dan LaTorraca of Zoomph. I am back with episode of Shareable Stat, and I am joined once again by Dan LaTorraca. He is the marketing director at Zoomph. Dan, you crushed it in your interview. Are you now ready to give us some tweets by Dano?
I sure am, buddy. Good,
For
good
those who,
callback.
hell yeah, I still rue the day when you changed the Twitter handle, but I understand why you had to do it. It's
Yeah,
gotta
I
grow
had
up.
to. Yeah, X by Dano isn't as good.
Oh gosh. All right, now we're gonna go through our Q&A with tweets by Dano. Number one, tell me from your time with the Panthers, the post or campaign or initiative, whatever label you want to put it, that you look back on with the most pride. Pun intended.
Okay, all right. There was one that comes to mind immediately. I mentioned it earlier in our chat, but we had this tweet towards the then Washington Redskins, and who they were the team in Charlotte, North Carolina, prior to the Panthers being there, and so they had a pretty strong following.
Mhm.
And the night before a game against the Panthers in Charlotte, they were hanging out at one of the bars. They had a team sponsored event. I think it Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s bar, and they tweeted something like Charlotte or North Carolina or something is Redskins country. And I was not having that. I was settling
Yeah.
down for the night. I was having some Oreos and a beer, I can remember. And I was watching TV. And I was like, no, we're not doing this. And I tweeted back, which I probably should have thought a little more about it. But good luck getting a trademark on that because at the time they had lost a trademark on their name.
Yeah.
And I thought it would do okay, but I didn't think it would explode that way. And all of a sudden, it's getting picked up by like national media as like the Panthers roasting this team. But it gave a lot of our local fans some deep pride because like they had been dealing with the Washington team kind of like invading in their territory. And those hardcore Panthers fans, like they were sick of it. And I think there was even organizationally at the ownership level, there was some frustration there. So the Panthers ended up winning the game the next day by like 40 points, and we were able to kind of double down and make a "you like that"
Oh
reference
yeah.
and all that. And so it was a great 24-hour period, but I loved it because it gave our fans such like a sense of pride. So that was always pretty special for me.
That's so great. And it's one thing to be quote unquote like savage, but when you do it in a way that's gonna make your fans feel more proud and less about like stomping onto the opponent, whatever, like that it's so much more meaningful. I like that.
Now they started it too, so
Totally,
it's on them.
exactly. You go with the Panther, you're gonna get bitten.
You didn't get the
Number
claws.
number two for you, Dan, and the name Tina Martinez better not be in this answer. The sports event you attended as a kid that has most stuck with you.
Oh yeah. Well, I won't mention Tino, but because he was on the team that year, but he wasn't. My very first Yankees game as a kid, my dad took me. It was 1996, and I think I was like 7 or so years old,
Mhm.
and it was against the Royals. Dwight Gooden pitched for the Yankees,
Yeah.
and the Yankees were down in most of the game, but Darryl Strawberry hit a game-winning home run, his 300th of his career, to win the game, a walk-off home run. And that whole experience was awesome, start to finish. Just like if you ever been to Old Yankee Stadium, walking out, from the concourse, which was grungy. And Old Yankee Stadium it had character, is what we'll say.
Oh yeah.
And you walk out and you see the field, and it was just it gave me my love for baseball. Obviously, the Yankees won the World Series in '96 too, but that one has always stuck with me growing up. But then I also have like my daughter's first sporting event was a Nets game, and like that's special to me too. And
Yeah.
she got in the video board, the kiss cam, and Allie
Oh
Love was like,
wow.
"Oh, that baby's so cute," and that was cool. And then my son's first sporting event was a Durham Bulls game, and that was fun. I got to get him to Yankee Stadium, so those first games for my kids will all be something special
Yeah.
too. But the Yankee game is kind of what started my obsession all those years ago.
That's great. And I love that insight too. Like as a father, it's something that we need to pay attention to is, and I think a lot of teams are doing that of like, how do you make that first game with your kid special as a lifelong memory for yourself as well as for them so that they become a fan for life and they want to do it with their kid. And that generational
Yeah,
fandom is such
right.
a huge thing.
Love passing that stuff down, for better or for worse. Sorry, kids, about the Nets.
Number three for you, and we talked about this a little bit in the interview, or maybe it was before we started recording. Just how did work-life balance, like as a parent, evolve during your time working for teams, like both from what you saw with your coworkers, and then of course as you became a parent yourself.
Yeah, it's hard. And at the Panthers, granted, I didn't have kids then, but I didn't do a great job work-life balance. But I was younger, didn't have the same amount of responsibilities, so it was okay. But I didn't cultivate those healthier habits and perspectives that I think would
Mhm.
have helped me later on. And I'll point back to the Super Bowl week. I had some good friends on the NFL side kind of let me know. Kenton Olsen comes to mind, and a few others. I think someone
Yeah,
at the Ravens too. Dave Lang were like, make sure you take a moment to step back and enjoy this period here because it doesn't. You may feel like it's going to happen every year, but it's not. So like enjoy it. And I was like, oh, absolutely, I will. And then I went and I worked my butt off too hard, and I could have enjoyed that week more. So I try to share that message with others now, even though I wasn't
yeah,
able to honor it. But when I got to the Nets, I still hadn't really learned that lesson as fully. It was at the Canes that helped me. Mike Foreman, great boss, and was very open about building a culture that did have flexibility and understood the value of family and not even if you have kids or not, it doesn't matter. You deserve to
yeah.
have a life outside of your job. So that's important, and that's something that was important for us as part of the identity of our department at every level. That we wanted to prioritize creating an environment where people felt comfortable having a life too. And ultimately, we're in the entertainment business. We're not saving lives. So that
Mhm.
was ended up being like a piece that we would try to lean on when hiring people. That there's always going to be a grind with sports, but you have to figure out, where to set the boundaries. And if you get your work done, then it's like, all right, I don't care if you're coming in at 10:30,
Yeah.
or that, or leaving early. Like you're an adult, you'll get your work done. It's important that you do have a healthy life and you can do all these other things. And as long as you get your job done, and if you have like an overwhelming amount of work, come talk and we'll figure it out and we'll prioritize things. So communication, thoughtfulness, and balance, it's key. But it starts with like yourself. You gotta it's on us to take that first step. And whether we're in the right environment or the wrong environment, you'll be able to tell. But you gotta prioritize yourself and your boundaries first, because when you work for a sports team, especially, everybody needs something, whether they're part of the organization or not. And you really have to be mindful about your time spent because you can burn out real fast.
Hell yeah. Yeah, and I think it's getting better as more young people who
Yeah.
start out in the space now are becoming leaders and understand that the importance of that work-life balance. And I mean, heck, I even read an article the other day about like the reemergence of 996 culture and the grind culture and all that. And then the counterpoint to that is like, well, you can work 9 hours 6 days a week, or 9 to 9 6 days a week rather. But if the same person can work a lot less, but because they're recovering properly, they're going to do better work than you. So like those extra
Yeah.
hours are not worth it if you're doing shitty work. And so like that
It's a
recovery matters.
great perspective to have. Like, and I've said it a bunch of times, and we talked about this, but a happy, healthy group of people is going to be more creative and more productive than someone who's just running on fumes. So that's an important piece there. And look, sports has a long way to go, and I'm sure this in general, work culture has a long way to go with this of creating balance and properly investing in resources that help people be more productive and have balance. But the more we talk about it, the more we focus on it, the more we weave it into our core values, the better it's going to be for those next generations.
Hell yeah. Here, here. Number four for you. Tell me like what you've learned so far being at a B2B company, being at Zoomph, about the important channels and the keys to reaching a B2B audience and or things that are important for a B2B company. I mean, I think everyone just kind of defaults to LinkedIn. Is that it? Or other platforms like is Instagram becoming more of a place for B2B marketing to take place? Or what are you kind of learning so far?
Yeah, no, I've learned a lot, and like I mentioned before, like I'm coming up on like that year mark today or
Yeah.
tomorrow, somewhere this week, and kind of reflecting on what I have learned, and the some of the key takeaways are, you really do have to understand your customers even more so. Like with sports fans, there's different demographics you engage. There's different types of fans and everything. But on the B2B side, there are such distinct differences between the different people you are marketing to and different levers that you can potentially pull that you really have to pay attention to that and be more deliberate with it.
Yeah.
I think there's also like you have to be very mindful with prioritizing the priorities too. Now that exists for almost any job, but in sports, because the calendar's there, the games are there. Yes, there's things you want to do, but in a lot of ways, stuff does get dictated to you based on the schedule of the team and what's going on there. That doesn't exist on the B2B side in the
Right.
same way. So you really do have to be mindful about, all right, what is the most important way for me to drive value right now? What do I prioritize working on? What is going to help now? What is going to help later? What is important? That to me stands out as like will separate the good from the great is like if your ability to identify where you will drive the most value with your time spent working on things.
So important. I mean, and even more so when you're at a startup that doesn't have endless resources. Like
Yes.
all those things matter so much.
Mm-hmm.
Number five, you're down. I'm interested to hear this one for sure. We touched on pieces of it throughout the interview, but your advice to other individuals when they're building and leading teams. You've been in leadership roles. You've hired a lot of folks over the years. Based on your experience, what's your advice to those people who are building their own teams?
Yeah, I mean the three things, and I mentioned some of this before too, but like for me, these values and the values that I expect out of my staff, my people, my colleagues, they've helped me a lot in terms of like I expect thoughtful communication and proactive planning. Like take ownership, be proactive, like and be thoughtful. It's not what you say, sometimes it's how you say it too, and sometimes it's when you say it.
Yeah,
Those two things are really important to me, and having that as a philosophy, I think helps people a whole lot. But I also think it's really important to manage down, right? Especially, I mean, like anywhere too. But my experience in the team side would say, I don't know, would like you have to give a lot of respect and grace and understanding and support to people that are actually rolling up their sleeves and doing the work. And it's not to say that it's not important to manage up too, but 10 times out of 10, like if I want to be loved by either or the people above me or people below me, it's the people below me 10 times out of 10 because
yeah,
those are the people that I'm going to care about long after I leave that job. And not to say that I don't care about some people above me, but it's really important to me that my staff knows that I have their back 100% at all times. So that's thing. It's like I think more leaders, many leaders do a very good job of that. But I think that's always an important trait to really push to build relationships with your people. And then it comes down to those other things, people planning and process. Like
yeah,
you have some semblance of this is important, but there's that other piece there that I think gets forgotten about. And we mentioned it a little bit before. It's okay to not know everything. It's okay to not be an expert. There are people on my staff here at Zoomph, they know a whole lot more than me on a bunch of things, and that's okay. I want that. That's important. I can be educated and I want to be able to lean on them for their expertise and their perspective and their knowledge or whatever it may be. I don't need to position myself as someone who knows everything. I don't have all the answers. I don't want
yeah.
to be looked at as that way. I think that creates more of a sense of collaboration and in communication and relationship building. So those are things that have helped me that I would also push a whole lot. But look, the most important thing there, the connective thread through all of that is it's about your relationships with people. It's about building thoughtful, authentic, real relationships and people knowing that you are there to support them and take care of them and they don't have to look behind their back and or be like keeping an eye out for like, all right, does this person really support me or not? And that's really important to me because I think it creates better environments.
Great stuff. There's a reason that you have a rich tree of descendants of your teams that are continuing to crush it in their roles across sports and beyond. That's a great
Thank
legacy to leave for sure.
you. Yeah.
At number six for you, I'm interested in this one. And we end up hearing about some really off the wall customers like a Feld,
Yeah.
And so tell me if there's another one to mention, or if you want to call them back, the lesser known or less recognized Zoom customer that is actually crushing it. It could be a team too that we may not expect to be like
Yeah.
really crushing it. Just tell us why or how they're doing it.
Oh yeah. I mean, going back to the college side, USF, love the work that they're
Yeah,
doing.
shout out
They're
Carl.
Yeah, and Carl's awesome. They've been great for us. Them and Clemson, I look at very similar because the way that they intensely use the program, they're in there every day. They're tracking things, monitoring, examining the tags, performance of campaigns, and they're really helping position things for either NIL or sponsorship value and then sales. Feld obviously is good too, and even on the brand side, because I don't know if they get enough love because you and I we have this rich sports background. I always got to make sure I mean, there's a lot of health, like Advent Health comes to mind, right? We have a lot of healthcare brands that work with
Yeah.
us because they have pretty robust portfolios of different partnerships, and they want to measure. They also want to see how they compare to others in the marketplace that have maybe they have a jersey patch or they have activations, and it really is a battle for relevancy and eyeballs and
Yeah.
exposure. So like Advent Health comes to mind. They're great users of the tool to track content's performing well, and they ask the right questions, and they're thoughtful about how they use the platform and how they understand data. So those are the ones that kind of come to mind top of the head. But of our hundreds of customers, we have so many great ones that are active in the platform or just really really good about advocating for us too across all sports and a bunch of different brand verticals.
Hell yeah, some great shout outs there. Love it. Number seven, we're going back to your time with the Panthers, and also with the Canes as well, though. I want to, this is always a fun question here.
Yeah, yeah.
Your favorite
Uh,
player on each team you got to work with?
okay. Hands down with the Panthers. If I'm talking about it from a marketing standpoint, it's Greg Olson because that dude, he got
Love
it.
it.
He was smart. He was sharp. We would work together on his annual Walter Payton Man of the Year campaigns, and he would just be cool with me letting loose on the stupidest memes of photoshopping his face onto a plate of eggs, and it was Greg and Hammond and Greg's or something like that. And I emptied the meme bucket with him, and he was always very appreciative and great to work with. And when I left the team, he pulled me aside, and he's a Jersey guy too. His dad is a high school football coaching legend. I mean, their school played against my school when him and I are the same age, except he's a grown man and I'm still a child. But he was always so authentic and so great and so sharp and fun to work with. But I got to call out Luke Kuechly too, just for the quality of character there.
Yeah.
They don't make many people and humans like Luke Kuechly. I mean, the tremendous football ability aside, I'll tell this one story. I don't know how public it is. It might be by now, but that Super Bowl season, our team photographer Melissa Melvin Rodriguez, who was one of the best sports photographers and just photographers in the world, in my opinion, she was standing up on a chair after the Panthers clinched the playoff appearance, and the chair was it broke basically because it was one of those folding ones, so it went in, and she destroyed her knee,
Ugh.
tore things, exploded. It was horrible. Luke carried her to an area where the team doctor was able to check on her knee, and eventually the ambulance came and took her away. And by the way, Melissa, tough as nails. That was right as the playoffs were starting. She still shot the Super Bowl in a Lego
Wow.
round too. So badass. But Luke stayed with her and just stayed with her until they got there, and was talking to her, and that's and that was just one case. There were hundreds of cases of Luke just being a stand-up guy. So always respect for Luke Kuechly.
Great.
On the Kane side, Seth Jarvis, hands down. You talk
Nice.
about personality and obviously ability to me, I think he is one of the most fun players in the NHL. And I remember sitting at the NHL CMO meetings a couple years back, and we were talking about how do we grow the game. And I was like, look, you need. And at the time, Seth Jarvis was a fourth line wing for the
Yeah.
Canes, but I was like, this guy, watch him. He has personality. And honestly, casual fans, they don't care if someone's on the third line or the first line. They just want personality. And if you give that to them, that's going to grow the game there. And I said, if every team can find their Seth Jarvis, we're going to be in a really, really good spot. So to me, now Seth has also now evolved into a fantastic and dynamic player. He is so talented as a hockey player and a great personality. But for what he has done to grow the game and for what he represents, and I think he'll do great, great things. He's a marketer's dream. So love
Seriously.
me some Seth Jarvis.
Well, despite his affinity for Harvard, I'll let you slide with Seth Jarvis as that one.
Yeah, yes, Jordan, yes.
Number eight for you. Some great ones there, by the way. This is we gotta ask our food question. We're almost down the wire here with Dan LaTorraca of Zoomph. Tell me the best meal to get in the greater Raleigh area and where to get it.
I'm a stickler for tradition in a lot of ways. If you want to get the most legit barbecue in Raleigh, old time barbecue, amazing atmosphere. Go Google pictures of that place and just great, great Carolina barbecue, right? They're Eastern style, so that's the one to go to. I'm going there tomorrow. I'm meeting an old colleague there, so I'm
Hell
looking forward
yeah.
to it. But old time barbecue.
Easy one, beauty. I'm always down for some barbecue. So, plan one for me one day and we'll hit up in Raleigh.
Yeah.
Last one to get you out of here, Dan. This is a wide open-ended question. Just tell me the sports business or sports marketing trend that you're most interested in or excited about right now and why. What's kind of on your mind? What are you seeing out there?
Oh man, what am I liking right now? I do enjoy some of the long form pieces that teams are putting together creatively. So that's one thing that like I don't watch them all, but the teams that I support are kind of like I will watch. I also really like the high quality cinematic style graphics that teams put out.
Yeah,
The Blue Jays most recently in the
yeah,
playoffs here. The Canes obviously have done a lot of those. I like things that still like you can tell what brand they're representing, but there's not a player in there, and it creates this different story about the brand by highlighting like the team name, whether it is a Blue Jay or a Storm or whatever it may be. I really like that kind of stuff. So that's fun to see. It stops the scroll. You
yeah.
really like, you pay attention to it. It's a cool, different way to tell a story. So I hope to see more of that in the future.
Yeah, it's something special when you can cover up the handle or the profile name and still know who it's from,
Yeah.
just because of the style and it's unique and something that's ownable like that. It's a great call out. And yeah, the long form stuff keeps getting better and better. Like these content production staffs are like rival any Hollywood production staff. It's amazing.
Very true.
All right, Dan, you crushed your tweets by Dano. Retweet all of them easily. Going viral. Now your chance to take over the podcast and tell us your all-star to follow. It can be a podcaster, a social media person, a blog, a newsletter, whatever it is. Tell us who they are and why they're following.
Oh man, besides you, because like I said, we stop the scroll every single time. Big fan of Alex Copolau and
Yeah.
SmartCon. He does an absolute like you got it. It's a must follow for sure. But like I feel like it only gives an inch, like a fraction of just how intelligent and thoughtful he is. So
Seriously.
he's great there too. And accounts to follow. I'm a sucker for the Sesame Street accounts, maybe because I got young kids. I'm always watching it, but they do a really good job on social media. I
Yeah.
mentioned that before, I think in other locations, but I always enjoy Sesame Street's content, maybe because it's a nice escape from all the other crazy stuff on social media.
Some great shout outs there. If you're not subscribed to Alex's SpawnCon Sports newsletter, you definitely should be. It's incredible. There's so much information and great examples every single week. And yeah, Sesame Street, like let's get some uplifting social media. We got enough
We need some Grover.
cynical doom scrolling stuff on there. Like give me some Elmos, some Cookie Monster all day. And how about you, Dan? Where can we find you as well as all things Zoomph across the interwebs?
Yeah, don't waste too much time following me, but I am more active on LinkedIn now more than anywhere else. So just Google or search my name on LinkedIn. But hey, give Zoomph a follow on LinkedIn and on X, Instagram. Those are the three platforms we're most active in. And hey, if you're interested in learning more about Zoomph, just head on over to our website, fill out that demo request form. That makes me look good because we get our best students there. So but we're happy to help. But even if you don't want to, go through the sales process, reach out and we'll pull some numbers. We'll talk social. We'll talk whatever. Always love connecting and meeting new people in the industry. And Neil, again, thank you for hosting this podcast for so many great years. There's been so many amazing episodes. You've done a great job lifting up this industry and really capitalizing on a lot of what makes it great. And you are something that makes it great. So I appreciate you and thank you for having me.
The feeling is very much mutual, and I thank you for coming on today. And if folks have not been on, heard about Zoom before, or have learned more today and are interested, I recommend, like we said, all you can do is learn and get smarter about it. And so check them out. And Dan, like you are a goat in the space for a reason, and appreciate you coming on today. And this has been tremendous.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
Just tremendous stuff being able to talk to and learn from Dan LaTorraca. Just so much good information from him. He's truly thoughtful, and hope you took away a lot of pointers. I know I sure did, and especially really helpful if you are a current leader in the space or aspiring to be a leader. And he's certainly also getting a really good insight and perch at Zoom. It's really understanding how all these teams and brands, even college properties, as he talked about, are learning and using the platform, using social in general, and creating value and benchmarking and all that good stuff there. Just cannot thank Dan enough for coming on the podcast today and sharing some of his knowledge and wisdom and insight with us. Well, that'll do for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. As always, I'm your trusty host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter, NJ287, on LinkedIn, where I post more content, the website, dsmsports.net, and the podcast. You can check it out on your preferred podcast platform. More episodes are coming at you soon enough. Until next time, this is Neil Horwitz signing off from the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.